All right, start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show, soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. And I'm your host, Ben, and this is your week 33 ish review show. I think we only had like 5 games or so in the league, and then we had the FA semifinals. And so leading off, there were some still big fixtures that did happen. So Arsenal and Liverpool both played and both got the job done. Both relatively in a professional manner, I guess you could say. Both did still look sluggish. Maybe after the midweek results, that would make sense. There was some squad rotation for Liverpool. Arsenal kind of went with the same guys, and it didn't necessarily affect their form yesterday, which I'll get to as well. But also equally important fixtures in the relegation race. So Brentford and Crystal Palace, the clear winners in that regard, both basically secured their safety, and both did it in style. To be fair to them, and then Burnley also is starting to give themselves a little of a chance with a big win of their own over Sheffield, and Sheffield and Luton look to be almost pinning themselves in. And then on Sunday, Everton and Nottingham Forest, basically played each other in what is the appeals pending or points deduction derby, where some pretty big controversy erupted as well. But in the end, Everton were big winners in that regard, possibly securing their safety. I mean, still a chance to play Luton heads up. They have a big game today versus Liverpool, so still a chance for Everton to get out of this. And then as far as other results, Aston Villa had to keep winning to keep their hold on fourth, and they conceded first, but they did very well to respond, scoring 3 unanswered, 2 in the second half versus Bournemouth, and they responded well also after a very long night on Thursday, where they're like the only English club to stay alive in Europe, thanks to a late goal, I think, by Matt Cash to equalize things versus Lille, and then after some more PK heroics by Emi Martinez. And some of the goals that Aston Villa scored in this game were quite lights out. So Emi Martinez has Villa still flying, and they might. It looks like they do control their fates. So we'll see if he's able to keep them in fourth. And then as far as other matters, I did mention the FA semifinals. We get the final that we probably expected, but we didn't. It's not the way we probably would have. The way it panned out, it would have been something we predicted. So, how would Man City respond to the disappointment on Tuesday? And frankly, they came out really flat as well. In fact, if Nicholas Jackson was a better finisher, Chelsea might have won this comfortably. But it doesn't matter because Bernardo Silva went from kind of joker in the midweek after having his PK save to ace to help City advance to another final where they'll face the team that they beat last year in Manchester United. So we'll have another Manchester derby for the FA final. And again, it probably is what everyone probably would have expected once the draw was made, but we didn't get here easily. So Man United jumped out to a 3-0 lead. It looks like they had everything on cruise control. And then after a couple subs, after Coventry City actually changed a little bit how they were playing because they were sitting in a shell, they were playing in a back five. And after Eric Ten Hag took Kobe Mano off and Garnacho off, things did start to be a little more shaky. And Man United's back line, which was only able to feature one healthy center back, which was Harry Maguire, finally showcased its vulnerabilities. And after Eric Ten Hag took out the only somewhat protection in front of the back line that had legs in Kobe Mano, it really was quite easy to get a run in. And this is a Coventry side that was in the championship playoffs or final last season, but they're in, I think, eighth or ninth in the championship this year, and I think they had one shot in the first half, and they ended up something with like 18 or 19 for the game. Just Man United have been what they've been all year. It doesn't really matter who they're playing. It seems, and they went from not being competitive at all in the first half to, frankly, it was not only did they complete a miracle comeback to make it 3-3, thanks to a lovely PK by Haji Wright to get it to extras. It looked like they had the game won in the final minute of extra time, only for VAR to rule out a very late goal for offsides. And I'll get to this when we get to it. I think it's guesswork the way they do these lines, and I do think it was Coventry will feel hard done by. And there's been a lot of talk as well that Coventry still had a chance to win it, and they choked in PKs. But it psychologically it has to be really hard to regroup yourselves after thinking that you've won the game, and then for it to only be called off for again a very shaky offsides. Now, if it was clear, there's an argument for that, but I just thought this was I just thought it was wrong, to be honest, and they do go on to lose 4-2. In fact, they actually had a chance even after Casemiro went first and missed. So and Kaji Wright stepped up, but after that, I think it's O'Hara has one saved, and then someone hits it over, and then Man United don't miss after Casemiro, so they win 4-2 on the shootout, and we do get the Manchester derby that again everyone probably would have expected, but it was it was not a the game at all was not what we expected, and I was kind of kicking myself because I was watching Liverpool play Fulham instead, but I did get to watch a fantastic Trent Alexander-Arnold goal. But yeah, I watched the first half of that game, and just when I heard that they had tied it 3-3, I was just like, how? Because it felt like maybe Coventry had two touches inside the Manchester United penalty box in the first half. They were just sitting in a shell and did not look competitive. And then you watch the highlights and how it happened, and you're like, oh, some of Manchester United's doing as well. Also, I mean, I'm gonna get to it, following up, but the amount of times I saw someone like Wan-Bissaka being played, too high upfield, out of position, you're up 3-0. Why don't you just play your fullbacks with the back line? Why don't you play compact like you've been able to do? You showed you were able to do it versus Liverpool just a couple of weeks ago. And instead, Dallow's being caught in midfield. Maybe that was what they were trying to do. Maybe they thought they were weak in midfield, so they played Dallow inverted. But then that left the space out wide that Casemiro wasn't able to mark. And then you bring on someone like Anthony. Maybe Anthony was supposed to be defensive, and he didn't do anything defensively. So you just opened up gaps for Coventry to be able to easily advance the ball to get into the final third, and then they were able to they got some luck in some of those goals, but they were able to once you allowed them to get the ball upfield. Then it was all a case of would Onana be able to save some shots, or would you be able to defend a team attacking you? And they just United went into this with I don't know their fifth choice back line, if even that, and that just ended up showing. So I thought it was one thing for Coventry to recognize, hey, they could still actually, get into this if they made some changes, and they did. And then I think it was a lot of the case of just Man United kind of, playing into this as well. Which, and again, I will get into that, but I do want to touch on briefly with Arsenal and Chelsea that happened yesterday. Uh, I was only watching, in between, so I can't really talk about it, in depth, but it's 5-5. They win 5-0. It could have been much more than that. It's relatively a comfortable or a competitive game, I guess, in the first like 25-ish, 30 minutes, where Nicholas Jackson was actually, in behind a couple of times and just he had just like in the FA semifinal, he had just really poor decisions. Where a few times he wasn't even able to force a save. He was just in on goal, and he was actually kicking it out of bounds. There was one time when it looked like he actually had a free header and just almost like flopped it, and it was easy for Raya to catch. So Chelsea were at least giving Arsenal a scare a little bit, but that was really it. I mean, the 5-0 I think reflected how the game really was because in the same manner, Arsenal had multiple chances to get that second goal before they actually did. Kai Havertz was in behind a couple of times, Saka as well. And just it was starting to look the case. Well, maybe Arsenal's kind of poor finishing in that first half come back to hurt them because it felt like they should have been up more than they were, and then the full time really does reflect it. I mean, Chelsea were as bad as possibly they've been in some time. They were without Cole Palmer, and maybe you see how important he's been. They were without Malo Gusto, and they were playing this kid Alfie Gilchrist, I think 18 years old, making his debut, and the first goal comes on down his side with Trossard. So. It was not the strongest Chelsea team, and they looked competitive versus Man City only a couple of days ago. And maybe if Jackson finishes a chance, maybe they're actually the team that's set to have the final in Wembley. So this did come as a little bit of a shock. I mean, Chelsea looked quite good just a week ago on Monday when they destroyed Everton. Now, Everton or Everton, but still. But I was also Cole Palmer having 4 goals. And just you see how completely clueless they were when they didn't have him to kind of look for the ball. Now maybe this still happens because Chelsea's back line was absolutely atrocious. But that's also somewhat of Arsenal's doing, and I do think it is more of a case of celebrating what Arsenal looked like because they haven't looked like this in maybe a calendar year. And so why was that? And I think. I think another thing to talk about is it's a very fitting storyline that the player that Chelsea fans have mocked all year in Kai Havertz, he came back to straight up dominate them. Scored 2 goals, possibly could have had four or five himself. He was unplayable, and finally he did finish a 1v1. Because that has been the real criticism I think I've had is Kai Havertz has gotten in a couple of these situations. You can think back to Aston Villa, where he looked like he was in behind 1v1 and just wasn't able to finish. There were a couple other moments before this as well, and he finally did. I think that's how they got their third goal. Ben White scores two. Ben White was way more advanced. That entire right side of Arsenal just has been kind of non-existent for the past month, and White, Odegaard, and Saka were back to their best. I don't really know if what necessarily changed other than Thomas Partey was back into the side, and you had a holder that was able to actually find Odegaard in pockets as opposed to Odegaard having to drop back. So he was able to get the ball in better areas. And then Rice in the basically the new shocker role. Rice looks more like an eight. Than necessarily a 6/8 than necessarily a single pivot, a holder. He looked way more comfortable to me. That's actually how they get their first goal. Wright has a very nice little dribble, and then he plays it to Trossard, and then Trossard's able to finish. So I don't think it's insignificant that Thomas Partey gets his first start. It's probably the best Arsenal have looked. Arteta had been playing Jorginho here, and Jorginho had done a decent job, but at the same time, Jorginho can be vulnerable. Where Partey looked again, it was the first time we actually saw a Partey, Odegaard, and Rice midfield three, and it passed the eye test, at least. Now, we'll see, if Party's able to go the whole year. It's been very strange that Arteta hasn't really trusted him at all. Thomas Partey got a little cameo, versus Wolves, and I thought he looked good in that game as well. I was wondering why we didn't see Partey, versus Bayern, to be honest. Now, he has taken forever to recover from an injury, and it's probably gonna be the last few games they have him because it looks like they've been linked to someone named Zubimendi of Real Sociedad, but at least for this little 5-game stretch they have here with Party back in the squad and Martinelli's back. They honestly, Arsenal look to be as healthy as they've been all year as well. This actually sets up quite well for them. So we'll see what that is because they looked very flat versus Wolves. And another thing too was Arteta, basically didn't rotate his 11 again versus Wolves, and you were starting to wonder, is he overplaying Odegaard again, overplaying Saka? Saka showed some glimpses at the end of that Wolves game, but he was mostly blocked off, and they tried Declan Rice in that little in that single six role. They tried Havertz actually in midfield again with Jesus up top, and that just hasn't worked at all. Yeah, ever since any time that he's tried that, that to me has not worked. And I think Arteta maybe by accident or maybe finally discovered uh, that what his maybe first choice 11 is, and going forward next year they set up pretty well as well. As long as they can, find someone to replace Party, because they'll have Julian Timber back, who looks like he's finally getting some minutes with the U21s. Because I think the idea was to actually have Timber starting in one of those fullback spots, which they've significantly missed as well. Basically, he can do the things that Zinchenko can do, but also he's not nearly as of a liability defensive wise. So a lot of reasons for Arsenal fans to be optimistic now, to because there's been a lot of doom. Even though they pushed this juggernaut in Man City that has been basically created illegally. Uh, at least if that's what the investigations or that's what the allegations are saying, and they pushed them twice, 2 years in a row, and they've caught Klopp's Liverpool in a very short time as well, when people really didn't expect that to happen. And when they got Kai Havertz, everyone was wondering where the goal is going to come from, and they've been able to basically manage that. I think they're only maybe behind Man City when it comes to goal scored. If not, they're very close to that, and they've been the best defense all year. So yeah, they've had a couple down patches. I do think Arteta not being able to figure out a way to play Rice a little bit further advanced, and not being able to capitalize, I guess, on the way that someone like Bayern was defending them, or I guess Porto. There were a couple like stumbling blocks, but other than that, they've had another fantastic season, and the fantastic season could turn into a historic season. We'll have to see how this goes. If Man City do slip up, Arsenal are definitely going to be the favorites to lift it. be 5 goals added on to the goal differential, so Liverpool can maybe catch them in points, but not necessarily that. So, still some big fixtures though. That must be said, but big fixtures really for all 3 of those clubs. So Arsenal, I think, have the North London derby, but Tottenham are starting to have a massive injury crisis of themselves. They're not going to be at full strength. Tottenham. I don't know if they'll have Udogi or Pedro Porro, so it might be a makeshift back line, and it doesn't look like they'll have Richarlison. So it won't be the strongest Spurs side. And then after that, I think they play Bournemouth early, the Saturday early game. That could be maybe tricky. We'll have to see. But Liverpool also have West Ham early in the morning as well. That's, I think, away to West Ham, so that could be tricky for them. Liverpool still have Aston Villa, not going to be easy, and then they also have Spurs, and they play Spurs a little bit later. So maybe Spurs could be healthier, and Liverpool are going to be without Diego Jota. It looks like for a couple of those games. So, and then Man City, we'll see what they're able to do versus Brighton. They have a tricky game away at Brighton, I guess tomorrow. Uh, and I think they've already played Aston Villa. They still have Spurs, so it's maybe a tricky spot there. But other than that, yeah, it's if Man City can just drop a point here and there, if someone can actually get a draw on them, it does look like Arsenal, not Liverpool, would actually be the favorites now. I was starting to wonder, maybe Arsenal are kind of running on fumes. But after yesterday was impressive, in a scary way, and they're not going to have uh, two hard Champions League games where, Arteta would have had to run Odegaard and Saka's legs to the ground. So yeah, if you're an Arsenal fan, you have to really like where you are right now. And then, so moving on to the FA Cup, I don't want to spend a ton of. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the City Chelsea game, but I will spend some time on the Man United Coventry game. So goals by McTominay, Harry Maguire right before halftime, and then Bruno relatively early in the second half, 3-0. You figured that was the tie, or that was the game. And then Ella Sims in like manager Mark Robbins made some subs around the 63rd minute mark, and I guess around like 65 they get their first goal in Ella Sims. And one of the reasons why they get the goal is one of the subs that comes on has a really nice, I think it's Tavares, has a really nice cross into the box that Sims is able to score. And then O'Hare gets a one shortly after that, and right after the Sims goal, that's when Kobe Mano went off. Which, looking back, Ten Hag really messed up here. Maybe he thought bringing on Ericsson. Ericsson's a little more experienced. Maybe Ericsson will have a better head in his head as far as how to control the ball or whatnot. But anytime Man United were losing, I don't understand why they were still trying to attack as well. Anytime Man United were losing it, they were just going to the open space where Man United were not able to cover it, and Ericsson doesn't have the legs to get there. Mano would have. O'Hare is able to. I think it's Haji Wright gets the ball, and then he drags, he carries it a little bit, and then he's able to find O'Hare, and O'Hare just has a pop, and it kind of deflects off uh, Wan-Bissaka to go in, and then Haji Wright gets a PK after Wan-Bissaka is trying to. Haji Wright also played a role in getting the foul. So what happens is he gets the ball, and has a really nice cross into the box, and I think one of the defenders is trying to. I think it's Blanken or Banks is trying to send it back into the box, and basically Wan-Bissaka has his arm stretched out. It's close, but that's the kind of call that we've been seeing all year. But what's funny enough is it's not the call that happened in the Nottingham Forest and Everton game, which I'll get to later on. So 3-3, and then again in extra time, it looked like they had a chance to actually win it, and they did get the ball in the net, and it's just it was taken out for Forest. So with Man United, there was a very strange build-up leading up to this weekend. So Man United had a major injury crisis at the back, which all of this played a role in what we saw. Only Harry Maguire was a fit center back, so we saw Casemiro next to him. And then so Casemiro wasn't able to play in midfield, but Casemiro wasn't terrible, at least in the first half. In the second half, you just saw Casemiro just not really understanding how to play the position. Like the way how Coventry get that third goal is when Haji Wright gets the ball, Ericsson is marking no one, and Casemiro is not marking no one. And it's just really easy for Wright to have a cross with no one really being near him. Dallo has been played out of position at that point too. I don't really. Dallow's supposed to be your right back, and he was trying to play as a midfielder in that second half, which is it was just very weird tactics. But also there was talks about Garnacho and Ten Hag maybe having a bit of a falling out, and he subbed off Garnacho when maybe he shouldn't have. Now, I don't want to come out as a hypocrite because we saw Garnacho not doing the best work defensively last week versus Bournemouth. But one thing Garnacho is he'll always be available to be an outlet to get the ball. And the way that Coventry were really pushing high and high up, you figured they had to counter. Maybe a Garnacho. I would have probably taken off Rashford and moved Garnacho to the left, but he didn't. He left Rashford on, and it looks like Rashford maybe even suffered some kind of a muscle injury by playing so many minutes. Uh, and then Coventry. What's weird is they didn't have the best form coming into this. Looks like the championship playoffs are out of reach for them, and this is really all they had to play for, which can actually make a team really dangerous. To be honest, even if it is Man United. Uh, but it's not just that it was really the perfect underdog story because yes, they're facing the name, the big Manchester United team, but it was a paper tiger coming into this with the injury crisis and the overall distractions, behind the scenes. So Man United went with Dallo, Casemiro, Maguire, Aaron Wan-Bissaka on the left. He's a good defender, but he doesn't feel comfortable playing there. So that's kind of a problem as well. McTominay and then Bruno. McTominay back from injury. McTominay back in the midfield, and he scored a goal. But that's kind of the problem. He's playing next to Kobe Mainoo, where you're supposed to offer some protection. McTominay and Bruno are basically strikers. They like being in front of the ball where they can get it. So you had Mainoo playing by himself, and then Garnacho, Hoyland, and Rashford, and then Coventry, they went with someone named Thomas Kitchen at the back, and then Van Ayuwaka. I'm not really good at these names. He had a good game though. Ben Sheaf, and then Eccles, and then Bidwell, and then O'Hare in the middle, and then Sims and White. But really, it was a back five. You only really had Ben Sheaf, Eccles, and O'Hare, and then Sims and Wright were at least two strikers. So that was at least something, but it was very, very defensive minded. They weren't really able to get any touches in that first half. And really, in the first 10 minutes, you see the early pattern of the game. Coventry are playing in a back five. Things are very compact. Casemiro and Maguire basically have all the ball. And no pressure on them, and basically the idea is just they're set out to see if Man United can pass through them, and they kind of do it with ease. So the first goal happens with zero ball pressure. Maguire does well to pick out McTominay, who makes himself available. He turns, finds Casemiro, finds Garnacho, also available on the wing, and then Garnacho is able to run inside and drag in the fullback with him, and then Dallo makes a trailing run, and then Garnacho plays him. The ball, and then Dallo has a really nice square ball into the box that McTominay is able to get on the end of. So Kitchen here is the third center backs. He thinks he can recover to stop Dallo's cross, and he's a second too late. And this game, that does matter. And then there you go, McTominay back into the 11 and gets a goal. Scored versus Liverpool in the quarterfinal as well, and he seems to pop up in the box in the right time. Just the problem is I think he's been playing out of position too many times because he's basically a second forward for them, not really a progression based or defensive minded midfielder. But and it really is a well-timed run. But also the interesting thing is, Hoyland, Rashford, and Bruno. It's not one that they saw, so it's a tap in, but it's well worked and earned. Tap in. Then Dallo makes another forward run that goes on missed. Bruno picks him out. Dallo this time, kind of waits for a cutback ball, plays it to Rashford. Rashford has a good shot, draws a save, and a corner kick awarded, and they score on the corner kick. So Harry Maguire puts it home, and the commentary was kind of funny. I put down the note that Harry's big head gets Man United a big goal, which wasn't wrong. So that was clever. But Man United and Maguire was the only fit center back to start the game, and got his team up to a 2-0 lead. So that's what it was going into halftime. Felt like it was a comfortable 2-0 lead as well. Coventry were just sitting in a block, just begging to be I don't say murdered, pelted, essentially, and they pretty much were, and it didn't feel like they were even close to being competitive. And then the third goal happens. So Coventry again, this time, are trying to be a little bit more attack minded in the second half. They're trying to push people a little higher up. And here, Bidwell loses the ball to Dallo. Garnacho runs onto the loose ball, carries it upfield, finds Bruno in the middle of the field. Bruno carries it to get the ball basically in the box, and then finds Rashford. Rashford does well to keep hold of the ball, then finds Bruno, and then Bruno takes a very clever touch to go around the nearest defender before sliding it back past the keeper with his left foot. And the deflection basically takes it past the goalie. So 3-0, you figured that is the game, and then the changes come. So Binks, Tavares, and Torp come on, and all three he played a role in all three goals that they scored. And then Ten Hag made a change as well, taking Garnacho off for Anthony. And again, at the time, this did make sense to me because Anthony really hasn't been terrible defending this year. But he didn't. I don't remember him really, tracking back once in the second half after this change was made. And Garnacho's a better player than Anthony. What you could have done is, I guess, brought on Anthony and then maybe taken Rashford off to play Garnacho instead, because Rashford really didn't do anything in that second half either. And another thing too is just Hoyland was almost invisible again. I don't necessarily think it's necessarily his fault either. But one thing you can say is Hoyland wasn't really doing much to track back either. Like, Man United didn't realize you had a 3-0 lead, you didn't need more goals, and it almost felt like they were going for the Hollywood moment. Let's score for the fans essentially. Let's put on a show for the fans, and all they did was open themselves up. So the first goal in the 71st minute, United can't win the ball, can't win the first ball that's cleared upfield by Onana. I think number 10 gets the better of Dallo and then passes it to Tavares, open right side of the field. Wan-Bissaka is way too high here for no reason, absolutely no reason. Because of that, Harry Maguire has to figure out, do I try to block off the cross, or do I try to stay home and defend it? And he basically does neither. And then in the lead up, you also see Dallo basically getting beat by Sims, spinning him, and then Dallo is pointing, screaming at his teammates to mark Sims in the box. And Tavares has a very nice cross to find him, and Sims gets the first time finish to go in. It sheds it a bit, but it makes no difference. Game on. Thanks to the former Everton man, but also in his thanks to Man United. Just getting caught way upfield, and also it's a terrific ball sent in by the substitute Tavares as well. It's not the easiest ball to fit past Maguire. He had to thread this, so did well there. And frankly, it was clever on Sims to take it when he did. If he tries to collect it, it's probably going to be a bobble. Maybe the chance goes. So risky and brave, but he's rewarded for that. And then Ten Hag makes the second change, and this is the one that backfires. So he takes maybe Mano asked for it. I don't know if he was tired. That could be a thing as well. I haven't looked into that. But Man United lost all control of the game, and you didn't have a way to cover spaces after this. So Eriksson again is good on the ball, but out of possession, he's a liability. And once Mano went off, United lost any shape they had in midfield. In the middle of the pitch was just wide open. That Coventry enjoyed again. Another thing too is maybe it could have been masked if McTominay had actually been disciplined. But McTominay is playing upfield and trying to be an option for the ball for them to attack. And again, it doesn't make sense. You've already had the scare. It's still a 2-goal lead. See it out, and they don't. So here a kind of a deflection, just wrong foots Onana from the box. But this just comes from Coventry winning the ball, up in their own end. Man United are attacking, and then they play something long for Sims to run onto, and it gets there with ease. And then again, I don't get why Dallo is so high upfield at this point. He's playing out of position. Eriksson can't do anything to run back towards his goal. United can't get their runners back in time, and Sims basically has O'Hare goal side of Bruno. And Sims makes the right decision. O'Hare has a pop and gets a little luck with a deflection. But there you go. Coventry are back in it all of a sudden because this happens in the 78th minute. Uh, and again, I don't want to necessarily downplay Coventry giving things a go, but the only way back into the game was Man United getting greedy and chasing additional goals, getting caught up field, and that's precisely what happened. And I don't. Maybe it's not necessarily fun for these millionaires to sit in a shell and see a game out, but when you have the back line you can't really play expansive football. Anytime that they were losing the ball, the first thought that Casemiro and Maguire did is they want to run backwards. They don't want to, chase the ball, allowing someone to easily run past them. So you just were exposing them. You had to be in a block and be compact and just kind of be disciplined, and they just they did not do it. So for that reason, Ten Hag deserves blame here, and I think the awkward discussion I have is I don't know what's worse. If he instructed players to sit back and not get caught, so Bruno, Wan-Bissaka, Dalot, and McTominay, then deserve getting called out because they didn't listen to him, or uh, he didn't say anything. And which is worse? Because if he told them instructions and they ignored him, that's not great either. They don't respect him then. And if he didn't do anything, if he didn't say anything, didn't tell them instruction, that's equally as bad. Again, I don't know which one is worse. None of them are good. I was thinking Man United were probably going to be able to stick with him. This is one of those situations where this is a turning point where it's hard to defend him. even if you want to. Now, maybe he somehow goes on and wins the FA Cup, beating City and getting them another, some more silverware. Uh, Maybe you can go with that, but this was bad. And if it is the former, if his players just kind of ignored him, I actually do think that that's easier than you can ship out players. You Man United need to do that anyways. So I actually do think it would be worse if Ten Hag didn't. Now that I think about it, it would be worse if Ten Hag didn't tell them to do stuff than he did give the right instructions and he was just ignored. You can ship players out, which I think they need to do anyways. And then the Torp has a chance. Comes on as a sub, like as I mentioned, and basically Man United can't clear it, and he has a volley, and this is an absolute missile. And Onana forces a strong save, and then in the 90th, they get the third goal with a right PK. So first Torp fools Dallo to goes past him. And he's also first to run onto a loose ball. Eriksson couldn't clear away. Torp then finds Wright all alone. Dallo is out of the picture. Antony is nowhere. Eriksson isn't marking Wright, and Wright gets it with great delivery in the box. And then Banks is the player that goes to the ground, slides, and gets contact to keep the ball alive. And Wan-Bissaka does have his arm hanging out, and the PK is given. And it is harsh, but this has been given all season. Really, the only time it hasn't been given was the day before with Man City and Grealish, or versus Nottingham Forest and Everton with Ashley Young. But for the most part, it has been given. The arm it's close, but the arm is out, and that's just they want defenders to try to defend with their arms behind their back at all times. Now it's harder to do that. It's not easy to keep your balance, but I think they want that. I think they want it to be harder to defend so you get more goals, essentially. But someone still needed to convert the pressure cooked penalty. And look at that. On steps USA's own Haji Wright, hero of the Wolves FA quarterfinal as well. And he stepped up and had a great PK that sent Onana the wrong way. So awesome moment for Wright and Coventry, and fitting as well, because it was his terrific delivery in the box that allowed the PK to happen. And what a goal. What a game. And again, I missed it live because I was watching Liverpool struggle was full in that first half. So to extras we go. And the Coventry Magic did not stop there. So Rashford has to go off for injury in the 97th minute. So that's something to watch. And then Bruno smacks the post, probably the one moment that Man United had. So here it's one of the few times Rasmus is able to get on the ball, does well to turn, carries upfield, finds Amama Diallo, who had since come on. Plays it back to Bruno, and Bruno has a nice strike outside the box. Keeper's beaten. It's just saved by the crossbar. And then the fun started for Coventry. So here, Haji Wright just misses. So Bruno loses the ball after a hard challenge. It pokes the ball off him. Van Aweka then gets on the ball, has a nice carry upfield. He played well. He played well in the first half. He was one of the few players that actually had some pace to him, and he was doing well to get the ball upfield. We just didn't necessarily see enough of it, but he showed glimpses that he can be a player. He looks lively, and then passed it to Ellis Sims, and then who found himself free. And because Man United really don't have defenders that can mark a man height or mark a man tight, they have to stay back. They were allowing Sims to be wide open because if you get tight on 'em, if you get tight on someone, you can allow them to turn, and Ellis Sims is going to beat Harry Maguire or Casemiro in a sprint. He just has to knock it forward. So that's the reason why that happened, and that's the reason why Man United needed to have better protection in midfield. And they didn't. And then Sims was able to find White alone. Again, Dallo is just nowhere to be found. Ericsson nowhere to be found. And then Wright just has a left foot that misses getting a piece of the far post to go in. So this was near. And then there's a chance for Ellis Sims. United just losing every 50-50 ball at this point, losing contested headers, and then so here I think Dallo gets dunked on in the beginning, and then Sims is able to find himself in the box. He's holding off on Pasaka, turns him, gets a shot off, and it's only denied by the crossbar. And then Coventry score, and it's just rolled out. So Haji Wright makes a forward run down the left wing, draws Dallo to run onto him. That leaves O'Hare open, who no one had picked up. Again, Harry Maguire is basically trying his shot now at second forward. Harry Maguire is out of the picture. That's the only center back, and he's trying to score a goal. So there's no one back other than like Wan-Bissaka and Casemiro, and neither are center backs. O'Hare sees Wright making a run, plays it to him. And Wright then does well to see his options, and he sees Torp basically joining him, and because Bruno basically decided to walk in the last minute of the game, and then Torp basically gets the first time finish to go into the net. And then, after the celebrations, it looked at and VAR officials deemed Haji Wright was a breath in front of Aaron Wan-Bissaka. It really is symbolic. The way that they blow up the pixels to get this to match, you can't tell when the ball is kicked for one, and two, it is entirely guesswork. And it's just if you can't see it to the naked eye, it has to be even. If it takes you like 2 minutes to be able to redraw these lines, you're just looking to deny a goal. You're not rewarding anything. It's not good. It's terrible viewing experience for fans that are actually there. Just none of this is good. Now I do think next year they're going to automate it offside, so it'll be quicker. They have to. Even that might not necessarily be 100% bang on, but it has to be better than this. This isn't defensible anymore, and it is unfortunate Coventry have a reason to feel hard done by, and Nottingham Forest, when we get to them, will have a stake about their game, and they're right to do that as well. But it wasn't over to PK as we go, but at the same time, the emotions of feeling you won it and then told you didn't played a role into that. I have to believe that. So Casemiro, misses his first PK. Haji Wright converts his, and Coventry have the lead. And maybe in that situation when you're actually ahead, that gets to the nerves more because you know that you don't want to necessarily lose it. And then O'Hara has his save by Onana. It's a good save, to be fair, but it's a short run up. I don't really like that. Uh, uh, One thing you saw with Man United's PKs, almost everyone started basically standing around the 18-yard line. Uh, I guess like the penalty yard line. That's basically where Hoyland, he's standing on the line. The two Coventry penalties that were saved were well short of that. So short run ups, you can allow the ball to get stuck in your feet. You're not necessarily going to get the best power on a short run up. And if a keeper guesses right, it has a chance unless you are able to pick out the corner. So Nana was able to guess right, and then Coventry had a player that skied it. I think Ben Sheaf. And then Rasmus Hoyland wins it for them with a very nice PK. It is worth saying as well. He's not able to get many touches, but when he does strike the ball, it's pure. Just you got to find a way to get him the ball more. I don't really understand why they don't try to focus more of their stuff through him, and they don't. But anyways, that's kind of where we're at. Uh, Man United just thankful that it was able to go to PKs after having a 3-0 lead. Coventry with 18 shots in the end, 5 on goal, the 1 shot in the first half. Man United 28 and 6. Coventry with 42% of the ball in the end. But it was 50-50 in the second half. Coventry are a championship side. Coventry had 476 passes. Now, again, it's going to be higher because they had 30 more minutes. Man United had 714. But Coventry with 82%, that's not bad for this quote unquote championship side. And then so there you go. To focus on Man United, I do every single week. I'll try not to spend too much time, but uh, and I think it is worth saying that they advanced last year in penalties as well. So I guess Ten Hag is good in that regard. Having his team, I guess, prepared for that because they beat Brighton on PKs last year. But just typical of them all year. Typical of Ten Hag as well. Poor decision making in the second half and extra time. Poor substitutions, in my opinion. And then just players were dumb. Players were stupid to keep chasing goals. That was the only way that you were going to allow a team to get back in it. And I mean, there you go. I mean, just no. Once Kawhi Mano went off, it was a free for all. And just no positional discipline by Bruno or McTominay. And then Ericsson doesn't have the legs in him. And once McTominay went off, that went everything as well. Dallo and Wan-Bissaka, just no reason for them to cross the halfway line the way that they were. Dallo was leaving his area to kind of play in midfield, maybe to give Ericsson some help, which you can understand, I guess, and I guess early build up and whatnot. But anytime they lost the ball, Dallo was nowhere to be found on that left side, and that's where a couple of goals really did come on. That was kind of the outball. The outball was like to Haji Wright, or maybe it was Ellis Sims when he was running out there. And Wan-Bissaka gets basically the first goal comes on Wan-Bissaka's side as well when someone's able to the Tavares guy is able to get behind him. So just really really bad. And then I think the worst situation was Harry Maguire. So Harry Maguire is the only center back, And in the final 5 minutes, maybe they're chasing a goal, maybe they're trying to win it before PKs. I don't know if it's Harry Maguire that does it or Ten Hag that instructed him because we've seen this before. We saw this with Fulham. Where Harry Maguire is the only center back, and he's in the box. He's making runs in the box. He's on the byline. He's trying to be an option when a ball is crossed to try to head something in. And they nearly lose the game because of that. Because when Coventry are able to get their attack going, Harry Maguire is nowhere to be found. So they're bad. They're bad every single week. And I guess the fun thing is they're bad in the same way, but you can always it's always kind of a different player. I guess you can look at. Uh, I mean, a championship side every single week, regardless of who they're playing, they're allowing a team to have 24 plus shots on you. And the only positive I have is Kobe Maino's absence really showcased. So he's become like the heart of the team in the second half of the season. But and they did have defensive absences, of course. But that's still that just says it all, really. A couple of those players probably shouldn't be on a top side. To be honest, Wan-Bissaka is credited as being this great defender. If you're going to be out of position, you're not a great defender. Harry Maguire, if you're not going to be able to defend against championship level attackers, maybe you're not a Premier League center back. And it is funny and kind of fitting that Harry Maguire scores a goal that you figured everyone would kind of praise them for, and I think at halftime everyone was. And in the second half, you saw why there've been a bunch of people that have been on his case the whole year, where he should not be on this squad. He'd be the first person I would ship out. And you paid more money than Liverpool paid for Virgil van Dijk for this guy, and he probably is going to get a call up for England as well. So there's just he can be decent on the ball, but man, he has significantly regressed, and it is sad to see. But it's just you can't really defend this. You really can't. But that said, they do still have a chance to win something this season. They did play City quite close last year, and they only lost because of an unreal Gundogan goal. It had happened in like 15 seconds into the game. He like volleyed it from 25 yards and beat it to Gea, and then Kevin De Bruyne had a bit of a wonder goal. Uh, but this is rough. It is hard to defend him, to be honest. But I don't know. We'll see how they end the rest of the season. I don't really want to talk about them anymore. So unless they actually do something worth talking about, I'm probably going to ignore Man United this far going forward because I always spend most of my show doing rants on them, and it gets repetitive. And then to talk on Coventry. It's poor and unfortunate for them. Wembley continues to be a ground that kind of haunts them. It's the same ground where they lost to Luton in the playoff final, I think, on PKs as well. So a similar manner. The three changes completely changed the game. So Mark Robbins, the coach, deserves credit there. But I'm not going to be as praising as other people because you should have looked. Maybe he didn't know Man United's defensive. No, you should have known Man United's defensive crisis. It was well public. Uh, to play in a box in that first half, you gave away the first half. Uh, I just, you get credit for getting things right in the second half, but you got things wrong in the first. And the reason why you got things wrong is because you were down 3-0. So, give and take there. I do think, Wright and Sims were always threats in and around the box. So once you're able to actually, find them some more touches, because that's another thing too. By sitting so deep in the first half, you weren't really able to even get them involved to be threats. The changes did change it. The Torp and Tavares player absolutely changed things, and Banks had the play that drew the PK. So just I don't understand why they were so negative and pragmatic. And maybe they're just scared. They saw it was Man United. They didn't realize that it was a paper tiger. Casemiro and Maguire's back line and Kobe Mano just playing midfield by himself, and then Ten Hag took Mano off, so you didn't have any kind of defensive cover in midfield. Yeah, a little maybe missed opportunity, to be honest. And that said, they were also straight up jobbed or wronged by the refs, but by this VAR decision. Because it felt like they won it, and then some nerd with forensic infrared goggles tried to outsmart everyone with some fake lines to try to take away a fairly good game winning goal. and that feels harsh, but at the same time, no one can tell me one way or the other. So the on field decision should stand. Uh, it's just yeah, I can't believe they actually ruled it. They actually overturned it essentially with what with the lines that we were given. It's just you can't really tell. That close should be, if nothing else, an advantage to the attacker. So and that's enough of my VAR rant, and that's kind of where we are with that game. And then Man City do go on to beat Chelsea 1-0, thanks to Bernardo Silva. Chelsea were coming off in actually some pretty good form. They beat Everton 6-0. Palmer had 4 goals leading up to that. Chelsea, have taken points off City basically 2 times, I think, this year as well. And so how would Man City kind of rebound from that from there? Because, they had their PK loss to Real Madrid, where Bernardo Silva was kind of the donkey, in that respect, and there was also a lot of focus on Holland, after that game, and we didn't see Holland in this game, and, I think a lot of the takes that people have had that, Man City are better without Holland, I think need to be revisited because 'cause I've been one of those as well, because we saw in extra time in that Champions League game with Real Madrid, Man City did nothing, and then, in this game, Man City did nothing. And, something that Holland does is, if nothing else, he'll make some runs, and that forces a defense to always run with him. And by doing that, you're creating space for Kevin De Bruyne or Foden to actually, receive the ball to be dangerous. Now, maybe Holland's a decoy, but, Alvarez wasn't really doing that, and it was just very easy for Chelsea to somewhat, take Kevin De Bruyne and Foden out of the game, in that first half. Grealish was getting on the ball, and he was taking forever to do anything. He wasn't really beating a man. He was just, keeping the pitch stretched, and then, maybe he would pass it backwards. But City were not good in that first half, and Chelsea were actually the team that was creating a little bit better. There was a couple moments for Palmer to at least force Ortega into the save, and then in the second half, it really came alive for Chelsea, where they were able to actually play. I think it's Cole Palmer again, who was able to play Nicholas Jackson in behind, and he had 2 chances basically in 30 seconds to score, and didn't. The first one, 1v1, he at least forces a save. That's fine. The second one isn't defendable. I think it's Cole Palmer that also gets on the end, has a very nice cross, beats City's kind of defenders. Y I think maybe Jackson was worried, where the keeper was, he didn't know and was kind of, scared to put his head through it. But you're the striker that they paid a lot of money for, you have to be brave in that situation. And he almost, like, short necks it and just, 5 feet away, if he gets any kind of contact to any somewhat side of the corner, he scores. Instead, he just kind of, almost missed hit the head right to Ortega. And then finally, Pep had seen enough. But finally, Pep made some changes as well. Took off Grealish, brought on Doku. Doku offers them a little more directness, and they score basically because of that. They were a significantly a better team after that. And the other change that Pep did was he moved Bernardo Silva almost to be on the right. Bernardo Silva, to me, understands how to play on the right wing. Foden doesn't. Foden doesn't look comfortable doing it. He never really has. They moved Foden more inside, and Foden was actually able to be a little bit more dangerous as well. Because I was wondering in the first half, well, maybe you can't play Kevin De Bruyne and Foden at the same time. I was wrong about that. You absolutely can do that. You just you can't play Foden on the wing side because he's not really going to. He doesn't like it there. He doesn't feel comfortable there. He's really good at turning and getting the ball on the turn and then looking for players ahead of him, and that's where someone like Holland would have really helped him because he would have made a run that Foden probably would have picked out or Kevin De Bruyne would have picked out that Alvarez was not able to do. Alvarez really wasn't able to get into the game at all. Uh, that's kind of just where we're at, and then basically City get their goal because I think it's Doku again. Doku has since come on and already beaten a couple of Chelsea players, and what he does is he draws attention onto him, and then Kevin De Bruyne sees it. He's able to make a run that goes unmarked behind. He gets to the byline, and then Kevin De Bruyne has a cutback ball that Chelsea can't clear it, and then it basically falls to Bernardo Silva, and he's able to finish it. And then that's it. There was maybe a chance at the very end where it looked like there was a breakaway that Chelsea had, and then Bill Chilwell was on the ball. He had since come on, and Chilwell does basically what Trossard did versus Man City just a couple of weeks ago. He had the square ball to I think Raheem Sterling, and decided not to play it. And maybe Sterling was offsides. I didn't necessarily look too close to it, but it didn't. It looks like he was on. It looked like he was behind the ball. Maybe Sterling still has to score that chance. Maybe he doesn't. Ortega's been a good keeper when it comes to making saves, but Chelsea didn't even get a shot in this regard. And then they finally got, I think, a free kick at the very end, and I think it's Mudrick or someone takes it and basically just boots it out of bounds. Just Chelsea were poor. They didn't really deserve to go through. Jackson, did have opportunities, but didn't really take them. So that's kind of where we're at. The other thing to say is Johnson started the game, but had to be subbed at halftime. It looks like City were trying to do what was interesting is Stones was playing center back, and they were trying to do a Kanji in midfield. Maybe that kind of said it all because Stones wasn't necessarily fully fit, and maybe he felt some tightness. I have seen that Stones will be able to play versus Brighton if Pep decides to start him, or maybe he'll start on the bench. But yeah, City look different when Stones isn't played, and because Akanji can't do these inverted things in midfield, Pep's playing with too many quote unquote defensive minded players in these midfield or offensive kind of positions. It's not really working out. I was surprised we didn't see Rico Lewis. Uh, he at least he feels like he understands that role a lot better than the other players that we've seen. It's interesting we've never really seen Gvardiol tried there as well. Gvardiol came on, I think, or it was Diaz. Diaz came on for Stones in the second half. Interesting we didn't see Gvardiol tried, but yeah, City were not necessarily good in that first half. A little bit better in the second half after the changes, and that's not good news for Grealish, to be honest, because they do look better with Doku playing, and for Foden, it looks better when he's not played on the right. So that's kind of just where we are. It wasn't the most entertaining game, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time focusing on it. Uh, Man out of 14 shots, 3 on target. Chelsea with 10 and 5. Chelsea with very little of the ball, 288 passes, 80%. Chelsea, earlier in the season were one of I think they actually were the top passing team and top possession team, and all of that has since changed. Chelsea, let's see, who do they have for their lineup? They started Chalobah and Thiago Silva. Thiago Silva back in. That's another thing too. I was wondering, Holland versus Silva would not be a match, and then it was Alvarez. And then Cucurella, and then Caicedo, Enzo, Palmer. The interesting thing was on the left, it was Gallagher. Gallagher was tried again on the left. He doesn't offer anything on the left. He doesn't. He's not an offensive-minded player. Maybe he helps defensively. Maybe that's what Pochettino wants. But this was a time to try Sterling, to try Mudryk. Sterling personally has destroyed this Man City team in the two games that you played, and just you had him fully on the bench and just didn't use him until at the very end. So poor management by Pochettino. This was a chance. Man City were definitely gettable, and Chelsea didn't take it. So, I mentioned how there was a chance maybe for Ten Hag to exercise some demons or change the narrative. Chance for Pochettino to change the narrative, and neither did. I do want to talk a little bit with Man City though. As far as tactics, there was a good moment to. There's been a good last couple of games to challenge the narrative. Is City better without Holland? Because Holland doesn't really suit them. They don't look to. They don't look to play balls in behind. They don't look to be open. They don't look to be a transition team. Holland, will go whole halves with only having 5 touches, and they're never really using him. They're using him as a decoy. But as we've seen, I don't. It's not necessarily a case of Holland being the problem. It's the case of Man City not really knowing how to find him or not really knowing how to play to a striker. They couldn't get Alvarez involved in this game either. And the one thing I will say is it doesn't have to be an either or. Where Holland or they're better off just benching Holland. They have him. The question I want to pose is: would City have been better off opting for Harry Kane 2 years ago instead of Holland? Holland will always have age on his side, obviously, and he's on the back of probably winning the Golden Boot two years in a row, helping City get 2 titles in a row since joining. So you can't say he's been a bust. But it's getting interesting, and it's getting easier to make this a case. You couldn't have made it last year. Even though Harry Kane was spectacular for his last year at Spurs, and I think he's already beaten Muller's record for Bayern his first year in the Bundesliga. But Harry Kane, to me, suits him. He does more stuff when it comes to dropping in to kind of create play a little bit. ahead, where Holland doesn't necessarily seem to be doing that. Holland just keeps looking for the ball, making runs without it. Harry Kane would have. He's not really a transition based striker. Harry Kane is someone when you get into the box, he'll put a chance away, and it just feels like he probably would have gotten a similar amount of goals had Harry Kane joined the City side. And again, because Man City aren't really a side that looks to be so direct, he I'm gonna make the case he probably would have, suited them more. Uh, Now again, you also have age on the side. Harry Kane had got a couple of years in a row where he had injury issues and not been fit, fully for Spurs, and he's gone to Bayern and actually been well to stay fit most of the season. So you could have argued, that. Holland, though, for being, as big and young as he is, he's also had some injury issues. He missed 2 months of the season here for it's like a toe injury, so it wasn't like a muscle one. But I do think that is interesting because the thing I would say is, Man City are doing this on their own. They're kind of they're making it harder for them than it should be. They just don't like playing transition football because Pep doesn't like potentially losing the ball and potentially teams being able to transition on him. So they like to really almost uh, almost like a surgeon, like surgically, move the ball upfield where they then have everyone in place and they have a team kind of just caged in where teams aren't really able to get out, and that's when they try to look for the spaces to kind of hurt you. And that's where he really likes his wingers to hold as much width as possible. Because that at least stretches the defense out a little bit. But the problem is teams realize when the ball goes out wide, maybe a cross can come in and maybe Holland can get on the end of the cross, but if you have center backs, you can probably also kind of deal with that as well. Teams have recognized City don't really have issues when the ball does go out wide because when the ball goes out wide, all you're going to see is a cross, or maybe you're going to see someone pass the ball back. You're not really going to see someone be dynamic to try to take a defender 1v1 and to try to run at someone. Other than Doku, Doku is like the only one that actually does that. So th this has been a problem that Pep's kind of created on his own. Now, he probably doesn't care because City on the cusp of, winning, the league title for, like, 5 times in a row. But this probably is what got them in the Champions League, and there has been a couple of times where, it's gotten them in the league, here. So, 'cause, yeah, outside of Doku, they just don't have anyone. And then, I think that kind of hurts, Foden, that he's not able to play in a better situation. He can't he's when he's asked to be played, a little more out on the wing, he doesn't look comfortable, and he's not really able to beat anyone or do anything either. Now maybe he can play on the off the left, kinda like Grealish. Maybe you can try Doku on the right. But it looks like Foden is going to basically become the Kevin De Bruyne replacement when De Bruyne does eventually move on. Just kind of be the guy in the middle where everything kind of goes to. Uh, and with Chelsea, there really isn't a whole lot to talk about. You saw with Jackson in this game and versus Arsenal, there are positives and negatives, but he very much resembles Darwin Núñez to me, where I don't know what good anymore comes from you having some pretty good runs, being able to getting behind. Jackson was offering what Alvarez wasn't. Jackson was offering ways, forward runs to get behind to create spaces for Cole Palmer. Only the problem how is false hope better than just it's not exactly hope, I guess I could say. Is false hope better than nothing? If the outcome is the same, I don't necessarily know if it is. Darwin Núñez, you get false hope as well. You're creating loads and loads of chances where you expect to score more goals. Uh, but you don't have finishers in those situations, and there are people that score goals, and there are, as the saying goes, there are goal scorers. It looks like Nunez and Jackson are kind of the same. Now, both are young, and this is Jackson's first year in the league as well, and he has shown some promise. But he has shown he's got a lot of room to grow, as well, and, maybe it works out. He's joined, a side that looks like they're not gonna be competitive anytime soon, so he has a chance to grow with this young, Chelsea team. Now, do Chelsea, are Chelsea gonna be patient with that, or are they gonna go, for a different striker? I could see them going for a different striker, if they have the funds for it. Not Osimhen. Osimhen will probably be out of their range. I could see Victor Gyökeres of Sporting. But we'll have to see. And, yeah, it was a pretty big moment. A chance for, Pochettino to end the season with something to brag about, and now You really don't. Cole Palmer has been a positive, you can say. So yeah, he was one of the big reasons for making that signing. Malo Gusto has been Reece James' backup, and he's done well. Chelsea actually look a different team when Gusto isn't playing for them. So I don't know what they'll do next year. Maybe Reece James will be kind of played further back. But because that I don't know if you can play Gusto on the other side. But it's very strange. In a must-win game, you play Conor Gallagher in left wing, and then yesterday we saw Gallagher played in the number 10 role, and it looks like his job was just like to be kind of a presser to kind of annoy maybe Party on the ball. Conor Gallagher never was able to turn Party over, and when Gallagher was getting it, the opposite was happening. Party and Rice were kind of getting turnovers on him. He had a poor first touch. Looked like he never he was given a free roll offensively, and he never was able to really influence the game at all. So Conor Gallagher, yeah, that a couple games in a row where his kind of rep has gone down a little bit. But that's where we are with the FA semifinals, and we get the Manchester derby that probably everyone was expecting. No one's really, other than like if you're a fan of those clubs, no one's going to really care about. I guess I'll watch, but I'm probably not expecting the best game. But we'll see. We'll see if maybe we get a surprise. And then I'm gonna get to the relegation contest. Arsenal Liverpool played. I mean, feature them every single week, so I'll get to them at the very end. But I'm gonna get started with Brentford and Luton. Why is Brentford going to win 5-1? Uh, Kind of a shocker, to be honest. Now, Brentford winning, not that surprising, but winning in this kind of fashion was no Ivan Toney in this game, but they did get a boost with what they got back. They got Ethan Pennick back. And that's not gonna be why they won 5-1, but that is gonna help them going forward because I thought Luton could actually give them fits. Luton get the ball, they have really good crosses in the box. Carlton Morris is very good in the air, and Brentford have struggled in those kind of situations. We saw Ollie Watkins just a couple of weeks ago, dunk on Brentford to get a couple of headers to go in. And Pinnock was very good at defending Morris. You don't really remember him kind of doing really anything in the game. And then Brentford were very good at just catching Luton almost too high upfield. They're playing they could have been playing a back five. And what they were doing is they're playing a back three with very high wing backs to be kind of attack minded. And Brentford were enjoying actually getting behind them with ease. And another thing too is Thomas Frank went into this with a bit of a different lineup. Sometimes he's played. Sometimes he's matched teams. Sometimes he's done a back three as well. And with Pennick back, you could have understood it. You actually had another defender to do it. And here, it was kind of the opposite. We saw it was almost like a makeshift back three. But what he did is he went with four. He went with three attackers. He went with 4-3-3, which is what he had done when he had a healthy squad in the beginning of the season. And we saw it again. And we saw Lewis Potter played as a further attacker, but what we also saw is we saw almost Reguilon played as another attacker. And what we had is you had Ayer almost as the right fullback, and he just kind of shifted over. So Brentford still had kind of three at the back. But this was you almost had four attacking three, and Brentford were very good at just creating chance after chance that Luton were not able to defend, and Luton that has been kind of the one thing to say about them as well. They've been very fun on the eye. They do score goals, but they concede a lot as well. And yeah, not really the best moment for them because the NBC people were actually quite high on Luton's chances. And when you saw what they had for the lineup, they finally had a number of guys back. They had Samuel Okonga back. They had Mingy. They had Berkey back in their back line. Somewhat of their 11 was somewhat together again, and Brentford just kind of put them in their place a little bit and really did secure their spot for safety next year. So yeah, the first goal from Weiser, beautiful goal. Mbremo was able to find him, but Weiser still had a lot to do. I think he hit this first time outside the box, and what a hit this was to beat Kaminsky near post. But before that, Brentford had some chances as well. So the danger was coming. And then Weiser gets a second. Not nearly as spectacular, but the buildup was quite good. I think Mbremo again also is able to. It's either Damsgaard or someone's able to make a move and to get a cross off into the box, and Luton aren't able to defend it, and then Weiser basically is able to put it away, kind of a trash away goal. And then they get the third with Pennick off a corner kick, header, completely unmarked. And then Lewis Potter probably could have scored earlier, but Lewis Potter was a danger, making runs behind all game. and Luton's Kabore was not able to mark him, and Lewis Potter was able to make the fourth count with I think it's Bremo again with a cross basically to the back post that goes unmarked, and Lewis Potter does well to defend it, and then Kevin Shada is able to get the fifth, where similar kind of moment where Brentford able to get the ball in the box, and then there's kind of a square ball to the back post that just goes unmarked, and Kevin Shada is able to defend it. 2 goals in 2 games for Kevin Shada since he's returned as well. And then at the very end, there was a misplayed pass that Barry was able to go around Flecken and was able to put away. Uh, so I mean, big result last week over Sheffield, but not in this kind of way. Just to get the 3 points, and then uh, it looked had they lost this game to Luton, I think they would have only been 5 points from safety. So this was still an important game as well, and they played like it, and I do think they secured it. And with Luton, it was an ugly game versus Man City. But they played with 11 guys missing. But another thing too is while Foley dominated last week, it took a while before the wheels entirely fell off. Once Man City got the third goal, then it quickly changed to 5. And that almost is what happened here because it took a while for Brentford to get the third and the second, and then the third took a while for them to get the third. I think they went into but what happened is they scored two in quick succession to make it 4-0, and then the fifth one came. The first half, like I mentioned, Lewis Potter was getting a couple of chances. So the first chance of the game comes with Brentford. Little luck. Damsgaard's able to get onto a loose ball, plays a nice through ball to Potter, making a run into the box, but his finish is just right at the mark. Kabore loses Potter, and something to keep in mind later, as I said. There are a couple of Luton attacks, but nothing really came to fruition. And then Potter again, Reguilon gets on the ball, sends a super cross into the box. Lewis Potter again, free in the box. This time does get the finish right. It's a good header, but just forces a Kaminsky save. So Brentford were on the door, and then they do get in. The 24th minute with Collins with Wisa. So Collins does well to stop. Uh, I think it's like Chong onto a loose ball, then finds Mbeumo, and then finds Mbeumo gets it to Wisa, who first times it into the net, and it flies from outside the box, just beating the keeper near post. Really nice goal. And then Luton had a chance to kind of answer similar goal, but just Chan wasn't able to score with the first time hit, unlike Wisa. And then Ayer had a cross into the Luton box. Kabori nearly scored an own goal with. Lovely run, a little bit by Damsgaard here. And then that Jensen was able to pick out. And Damsgaard's starting to look more and more like he's ready for the league, which is good to see. And then Mbeumo then had a first time hit himself, struck the post. Luton, though, at this point, do not look competitive, and it felt like a second was only on the way, only a matter of time. And basically it was. So Mbeumo gets the ball here, but it's just too easily for Reguilon, Mbeumo, and Wisa to get the ball in space, carry it upfield. And it always felt like at that point they always had numbers ahead as well. Frank got the spot on playing 3 attackers up front. So you always had runners ahead of the ball carriers, and so the center backs were always worried about that. And Rob Edwards messed up by not realizing he probably. I don't know if they can play a back four, but he probably needed to play his fullbacks a little bit more defensive minded because they were getting caught up way too much. Anytime Luton lost the ball, it was Countertown. And then so we get the second goal right before halftime. So Wisa gets on the ball in open space, almost played as a false nine in this game as well. So that was interesting as well. Uh, by doing that, you had center backs that weren't really following him, and so Brentford always almost had like an extra number when they were able to attack. And then Wisa drops in, receives the ball, has a nice little give and go with Damsgaard, finds Mbeumo on the wing, and then Mbeumo does well to control things. It baits Luton players onto him. He slips the ball into the box. Damsgaard mishits the finish, and then the ball kind of stays in the box, and Wisa is able to finish. So 2-0 at 2-0 at halftime. It didn't really feel like Luton were getting blown out. There was a competitive game for the majority of the first half. Luton had majority of the ball. But it was just in the final third, Luton didn't really look like they were sure of what they were doing, and they were making errors. Brentford were not. Brentford looks much more sure of how they wanted to attack, and you were seeing that they were getting much better quality chances. And with Brentford, no Tony, no problem. The law firm of Wisa, Mbeumo, and Potter was open for business, as I had in kind of my notes. And then the second half basically starts the same way as the first half ended. Damsgaard gets the ball from Wisa, turns, has a nice shot, needs saving. And then we get to the third with Pinnock. It just comes off a corner kick. Pinnock just unmarked is able to score, but they get this by Reguilon, making himself basically an attacking outlet all game. And again, he gets the ball, draws the corner kick, and having him back wasn't just and Pennick, scores, but having him back again wasn't really about scoring from headers. It was really about defending. And again, he did a good job with Morris all game. So having him back is big because they have missed him. They've missed him, Ben Me. They haven't really had their back line the whole year, more than missing Tony, which has been kind of interesting. Tony's come back and definitely helped things. But really, the story of Brentford has been missing just everyone. They were without Brian and Bremo and Weiser for a long stretch as well, and just and Bremo and Weiser, seem to be quite a good duo together. We saw last year when they were missing Tony the last April, Brentford was still scoring goals. Just the difference last year to this year was they had a back line that was relatively available for them last year. This year they have not. They haven't had Rico Henry all year. They haven't had Ben Mee or Pennick. They haven't been with Ayer for a couple of these. Nathan Collins has taken a while for him to find his footing. Maybe he finally has. He's played better the last couple of games as well. Before he was making mistakes everywhere. Ayer had to learn how to play center back. He didn't look comfortable in the beginning. He looks much better when he's tried to play a little bit more down the right side or given a wing side. And Ayer had a good game as well. It's just it's taken a little bit of a time for just players to learn how to play in a different position. And they're still without Norgard, but Janelt's done a decent job of being able to kind of play in place there as well. And just Brentford are finally starting to come around, and you see what they could have been. And it's just kind of unfortunate for their fans that they weren't able to necessarily see that. And I guess the positive side is they probably will be without Tony next year, but you're seeing they might still have a chance. The only thing I would say is I don't know if Regulon is on loan. They need him, but you'll get Rico Henry back as well. But having Regulon back has kind of it's given them it's given them a bonus where they really were weak. They were without Aaron Hickey as well, who is also supposed to be the other replacement, and they didn't have someone to play on that side. Lewis Potter doesn't that never felt right. He was just kind of shopped or put in there. Uh, you have an outlet. You have an attack-minded outlet. Maybe Regulon can be got at defensively, but here, when they're trying to build up, he's someone to pass to. He makes good decisions, and he has a great cross on him, as you saw. And since getting him, now he had that issue versus Burnley, getting that red card, getting sent off, and they missed him after that. But for the most part, when he's been available, he's been good. He's been good for them anytime that they've played. So there was a lot of reasons to actually be optimistic for Brentford. Now we'll see what they do with Thomas Frank. He's been linked to other jobs as well. That could be maybe something to think about. But they've already tried to replace Tony, so we'll see about that. Their track record hasn't really been great though in the champ in the as far as, scouting and bringing people in, so we'll have to see about that if they are able if they get a, big sum of money on Tony, will they try to look to add in another attacker? Now, another thing we're saying is we're starting to see Kevin Shada back. He's gone a whole year without seeing him, and they paid a lot of money, for him as well. They first had him on loan, and then they paid I think they broke their transfer fee, for him, and we just haven't seen him, get a chance to develop, so they'll probably try to believe in him a little bit, uh and then, the other thing to say is I think they should probably put some money into, I don't know if necessarily they wanna stick with Flecken, some more, though he has actually it's taken a while for him to get going, but he looks to be a little bit better. Still, do you wanna necessarily roll the dice with that? Maybe you actually should find a better backup, I guess you could say, because the backup has a Strakosha. He didn't necessarily impress when I saw him in the few games, but I would try to find a way to improve that midfield a little bit because it does feel like Damsgaard's finally starting to come around a little bit, but they lack a way to they lack a way to kind of just pass through lines. Jensen is a little of that. Norgard as well, but fitness wise, they're not always necessarily available. You need someone to be kind of a little bit more creative. I would say maybe even kind of a 10 kind of like player. Maybe that can be Damsgaard. We'll have to see. Damsgaard is finally getting a little run in the squad. Maybe his bone issues have fixed up, and it's taken a while for him to adjust to the physicality of the league. But the last few games, he's looked good. Now, I thought it was going to be maybe Yamaluk that they would give a shot to. But Damsgaard's kind of replaced him, and in the last few games, the Damsgaard has actually played quite well for them. And then you'll get to the other goals. Lewis Potter Names guard again, with a nice floated ball to find Embremo, and then Embremo, makes a run to the box, and then he floats across back post that Lewis Potter's able to get on the end of because he again Kabore just lets it go unmarked, and then Lewis Potter gets the let's see, and then it's Kevin Shada gets on the last one. So Embremo glides past Barkley with a clever move, and then he has a nice through ball to pick out Yanold. Yanold has since joined in the attack, and then Yanold has a nice little square ball to Kevin Shada, who finishes the move. And then again, Luton get a little window dressing at the very end with Barry. Yeah, but I did not see this coming. Them winning would be one thing. You didn't necessarily see it being this bad. 21 shots, 9 on target, 6 big chances, and most created by Bremo. That's been another thing too. They dearly missed Bremo for that stretch when he was out injured. So they've gotten him back, and just their attack looks so much different than where it was. And this team would have been nowhere near fighting a relegation spot had they not had nearly the injury crisis that other clubs have had. Now you can say every team had injury issues, but Brentford aren't playing Europa football. They aren't playing midweek football for the most part. This was just like a freak kind of thing that they had to experience. So really was unfortunate for them, but it looks like they're going to be able to survive it. And another thing that's worth saying is you get it's 9 points that they've been able to win over the last month, and 3 draws in there, 3 draws in a row. And at the time, you wondered, was that actually a good thing? Because you need you need to actually get more than 1 point. But what that did, the 3 games in a row basically did give you, winning a game or 3 points, and the 3 draws were over pretty good teams. Aston Villa, Man United, and I think Brighton. So and then you come around, you knew you had the 2 fixtures versus the relegation contenders, and you won them. So Brentford, had this gone the opposite way, you would not have been able to say this, but they've been able to play their way out of danger, and good for them. Also they sold Riot in the beginning of the season, didn't have Tony, and yeah, again, this could have gone backwards, and credit to their staff, credit to the players, and Frank for being able to manage it, and it really is credit to Thomas Frank because he could have gone into this their way to Luton. He could have gone into this trying to be defensive minded, trying to do what he did versus Sheffield, and instead he went 4-3-3. He went full attack, and basically he took a gamble, and he played it perfectly. They were lightning quick at winning the ball back and being able to attack their back three, and their back three is Luton's weakness at the back, and so there you have it. Let's see. And we'll see what they do with the summer with Brentford. I think they also I think they've already bought this guy Igor, a Brazilian striker, to come in. I don't know if that's the idea. They were trying to link to Antonio Nusa of Club Brugge. We'll see if they try to go for him. But I would like to see if they maybe try to look in for the midfield. And then with Luton, I did not see this coming. Brentford winning, I could have seen, but this much better was a bit shocking, especially when you had a number of guys back. So again, maybe a little naivety by Edwards by playing his wingback so high upfield because he just kind of any kind of turnover, Dowdy and Kabore were just too high upfield. Uh, and just allowing Reguilon, Potter, and Bremo to always be in prime positions to just go with their 3 center backs. Uh, and another thing too is the center backs were sometimes allowing themselves to get suckered in by Wisa, making runs in the midfield. So there were a couple times when there were like 2 goals that came from this, where sometimes they were like laying off. They allowed Wisa to get the ball in turn, and then the other time was when they were actually running with Wisa, and Wisa was getting around him too. And now your center back is actually out of position, and Brentford were able to attack that way as well. But it's not the end of it. Goal differential definitely hurts, but Barkley will still give them a shot. They still have a favorable schedule. We'll see if they're able if they play Everton heads up. So that'll be a massive game as well. And I don't know. It's still. I mean, the big thing now is can Rob Edwards get his head to forget about this? They still have a lot of fixtures left. And one thing to say though is there are starting to be fewer contenders for those final 3 spots. One was going to be Palace a few weeks ago, not anymore because of what happened on Sunday. So Chris Palace destroyed West Ham 5-2. Olise, Eze, Emerson for the Emerson own goal for the first 3, and then Mateta, and then Antonio made it 4-1, and then Mateta again made it 5-1, or maybe it was 3-1, and then Mateta with 2 at the end, and then I think there was an own goal. West Ham were knocked out by Bayern Leverkusen. But they got Jared Bowen for that game, but he wasn't able to play here. And they were beaten handily last week by Fulham as well. And you're starting to see fans really turn on David Moyes, unfortunately for him. And I do think this probably will be the end of it. All of a sudden, West Ham have actually been linked to the guy that Liverpool were trying to get in Ruben Amorim. And if that is the case, then they're already looking elsewhere. And I said at the beginning of back in August, I made a prediction for December, so I was off. But I doubled down back in February, and I'll triple down. I saw Graham Potter at West Ham just being a really good fit. Um, and West Ham have a very good sporting director. They've been very good at what they're recruiting for the last. They've been hitting for the last few games or the last few windows. And the reason why they started hitting is because David Moyes had less of a say in transfer business. They brought in that guy from Leverkusen, Tim Stentland, and he's done quite well for them. Picking out Kudus, picking up Maketa, uh, and they might actually lose Paqueta. Looks like he's actually pinned something with Man City, kind of a pre-agreement. So we'll have to see about that. Alvarez as being Declan Rice's replacement has been a pretty good signing as well, and it feels like they have the pieces to play a little bit better, expansive football than what we've seen. And Potter there, I think could work. But we'll have to see if they go that direction or not. They're linked to Ruben and Amorim, which shows their ambition. They like the idea of being a Europe contending club, not just being fine with avoiding relegation. And I think the problem for West Ham and David Moyes is it, there are two teams playing in this game. That one was trying to avoid relegation, and one was on the outskirts of being a Europe contending team, a team that was in sixth or seventh coming into this. And Crystal Palace looked the former. West Ham looked or Crystal Palace looked the latter. West Ham looked like the relegation fighting team, to be honest. And Crystal Palace probably would have had. I don't want to say a special season because they still had issues elsewhere. But had Crystal Palace been able to go a full season with Elise and Eze together, they would have not. They probably would have finished like 12th, or maybe even fought for a top 10 kind of spot. I don't know how they would have been, at the back defensively, but just they had a chance to their fans missed having a chance to watch something special with Elise and then Mateta as like the big number 9 that does a good job of actually making forward runs as well, but also can be a threat into the box, big and physical. They had some pretty good pieces here. And since Glasnow has come into the side, their change in shape has really suited Tyrick Mitchell and Munoz, wing backs that like to get up and like kind of be the wing outlets, like to stretch, like to get balls in the box. It doesn't really feel like uh, they invert or play in midfield. They like staying on the touchline, staying wide, but they get really good delivery. Uh, and then the change of bringing in Adam Wharton has been a good change for them. And in this game, we saw Chris Richards back, and Chris Richards played a good game for them. Anderson's always been a good defender, so Palace did have the pieces. It was just the issue was more they never had any kind of depth at all. So when you had guys missing, they did look a relegation contender. And I don't know if necessarily it's all on Roy Hodgson. If you think back to last season when they had Eze, Elise back, when they had Zaha as well, they were scoring lots of goals for those final 5 or 6 games last year around this time in April as well. It was just a case of just not having their best players fit the whole season. So it's kind of just it's where we're at. I'll try to yeah, I guess I'll spend some time talking about the game. So in the 7th minute, what does a Glasgow Bowl look like? And it's a lot of fun to watch. So Palace, again, you mentioned how they were scoring goals last year as well. So here, Adam Wharton, who impressed last week, in my opinion, versus Liverpool, has a nice forward ball to Eze's feet in the box, and then Eze has fun dribbling into the box, and then shows the quick feet, then finds the 1-2 with Olise, and then Eze, plays it out wide to Anderson, the center back now, who's gone upfield, floats a ball into the box where it finds Olise, and does a really nice job to sneak up unmarked for the easy header. So West Ham chasing shadows at this point, just ball watching here, and Eze Olise is able to. And when Eze is doing this little dribble, Ulise is able to make a little run that goes unmarked and does a nice job to finish. And then Palace has another chance where Eze collects a long ball played to him by Munoz. chests it down with ease, and then has Mitchell, the other wing back, making a run, joining in the attack. And then Mitchell does well to get a shot off, but just kind of overhits it. But they get the second goal quickly after that. And then this is a goal that probably was goal of the weekend. What a spectacular hit! As they finish this off with a scissor kick, but the move leading up to it is really nice as well. But yeah, the scissor kick does make it special. So Chris Richards back does well to step in front of a pass to win Palace the ball back, and then Olise gets it, plays Mateta, making a clever run ahead of him. Plays in the ball. Mateta then tries to pick out the far corner. It's saved by the keeper, but just like the rebound just falls up, and then Eze just turns into Spider Man with the finish. And then just kind of one note to talk about those two. I- One thing I had thought about or tweeted about is I don't necessarily know if we would be looking had they gone a whole season healthy. Maybe if they were playing on a different club, I don't know. I don't know if we'd be looking at them like Vinicius Junior and Rodrigo kind of doing like a duo, where these are two up and comers, just in Europe. Uh, but I don't think we're necessarily far from that. Olise has a chance to for being so young. He's already in the U21 French team. He was starting for them. Elise has a chance to probably, get into, when Dembele is gets changed, probably, and Kingsley Coman, I guess would be another spot for that right wing for France. Getting up there in age, Elise is going to eventually, maybe it would be in Cuckoo, and Elise is probably going to eventually be starting for the French team. Uh, I don't necessarily know if his ceiling is not necessarily nearly the same because he did have that Achilles injury, but I can see as a playing for Man City easily. I can see he can do what Foden does, in my opinion. I can see Olise playing for Man City. I can see these two players being special in a Champions League level squad. And Crystal Palace has these two stars. Maybe they're lucky that they've both been injured the whole year, but I do still think suitors will come for them. But I just still, it is a shame that their fans weren't able to at least see more of this because they have two special talents. And I don't think it's that high of an exaggeration to say that we could have been looking. We had they been able to go a whole season, we probably would be looking at them uh, in a different eye. But we still have a chance to watch the last few games, to see what they were able to do with Palace. I mean, as a Liverpool fan, I wouldn't be against Liverpool trying to see if Salah leaves, taking a gamble on Elise. To be honest, had some injury issues this year, but I think sometimes that can be explained away. I don't know. He had injured playing for France, where kind of went in and maybe it's just kind of overplayed, and then maybe he tried to return kind of too quickly. But those can always be explained away, especially when you're young. If he was like 26 and still had the injury issues, then I'd be concerned. But I can see both of these two being absolute stars, and they're on Palace. So if Palace are on NBC and they're playing maybe a team people don't really expect. Tune in. If especially if these two are playing, at least, you get to see Chris Richards as well, an American. But Palace with these two playing are fun to watch, especially in this game. And then they get the third goal with Emerson own goal. But here, game set match. Elise gets onto another loose ball, carries it, then finds Eze near the box. Looks like the move is stalled, but then Palace recycle things. Find Tyreek Mitchell on the right side of the box. He fakes across, then plays it to Will Hughes. Will Hughes floats a ball. Instead, I think that kind of caught Palace by surprise. They thought the cross was going to come from Mitchell. It came a little bit later and kind of froze. Emerson is just kind of caught, and I think it goes off him. But basically, Munoz is right there as well. And then they get the fourth with Mateta. West Ham are abysmal, but Palace were very good as well. So Hughes wins the ball off Kudus. Mitchell on the loose, plays the ball, finds it quickly to Eze, who turns and then plays it to Olise, making a run on the left side here. Olise then has a square ball across the 6-yard area to pick out Mateta for the tap in. And because what creates the goal is the early cross, Olise had a chance to turn, take some time. Instead, he quickly plays it immediately. And I think that maybe catches West Ham by surprise. He's also because he does that, Mateta's still on sides. Had he waited a little bit, he probably wouldn't have been. And then West Ham get a one back with Antonio, just a Suchek kind of header into the box. 4-1 though, and that's 4-1 at halftime. So, yeah, not the best moment for West Ham. West Ham's fans. This is a team that is fighting, for the 6th, 7th, maybe even 8th spot at the end, and it looks like this is the team that's actually in, fighting relegation. And then we have, the second half starts kind of the same way. Eze just dances in the box, and he forces Fabianski to keep Eze out with a good save, and then they do get the fifth early on, so it doesn't really matter because Eze again on the ball just freezes the defenders. Eze then slips a through ball through the legs of Zuma. So this is a clever assist by Eze. Finds Mateta, and then Mateta is able to just pick out the corner with a really nice, calm and clever finish. But also just so good by Eze. Just what a good assist this was. And then the late own goal made it 5-2. Palace 18 shots, 7 on target, 7 big chances for them as well. West Ham with only 4 shots was wild. Palace with 555 passes, 85%. Palace were soaring in this game. This is as good as they have looked in a year. That's not an exaggeration. And on paper, you would have expected this to be a tough game for them. But West Ham were coming off those 2 legs to Leverkusen. They were probably tired, but also they had Eze and Elise back as well. It was a different Palace team. Uh, and mentioned already talked about them. Already talked about Mateta as well. And then with West Ham, I do think it's unfortunate for them because if you think about it, the team has overachieved all year. I've never really bought them as a 6th or 5th place kind of team where they've been at the table. But I do think you see the fans are agitated, and it's been awkward for them. And it looks like they may even miss out on Europe football. Now, I don't want to be say too much because they do turn around and play Liverpool at the London Stadium, and Moyes is going to have to. Moyes is probably going to talk to them and have them, fired up to play that game as well. It probably won't really matter. That said, it doesn't look like Arsenal or City are going to necessarily drop points. But if there is a team, if there was a game where Liverpool would slip up, uh, it even could be today versus Everton without Jota. But away to West Ham early in the morning, that could be awkward. But and the reports did break yesterday that Ruben Amorim is linked to them now and favored to go to them, not Liverpool. So that just says it all about maybe his time left at the club, and mentioned the Graham Potter idea. The negatives as well is, Igbena hasn't really played a lot of football this season. He broke his leg, 2 years ago, never really was able to recover, and that's unfortunate for him, but he didn't look on the pace at all. He wasn't really able to mark anyone. No Areola, and keeper, so it's been Fabianski for a couple of these, and they were just Fabianski wasn't able to make up for the poor marking and defending. And Bowen was able to play versus Leverkusen, wasn't able to go here, and they look different every time. Bowen hasn't been able to go as well. And as far as the future outlook, it looks like Paqueta could be on the move to City, and Paqueta's been one of their more important players as well. So it's going to be a different look West Ham team, regardless of if Moyes stays or not. And then get on to Nottingham Forest and Everton. And Everton do go on to win the controversy derby, 2 goals to nil, with a couple goals by Idrissa Gueye, and let's see where we are for time. And Dwight McNeil. Uh, these were good hits, but at the same time, I do think Matt Sells maybe has a little something to answer for. Felt like at least the Idrissa Gueye one was kind of a weak hit from distance, and it looked like he dived a little bit late. And McNeil was able to pick the corner very well, but at the same time, it's from distance. Maybe that's being a little harsh. It does feel, although, that Nottingham Forest were hard done by in this, and that's kind of the unfortunate. You're not gonna spend much time on the game because really there was not a lot of action. There's no team really had possession of the ball. Not many chances. There was one maybe for Wood right before halftime where they were finally able to get Wood a touch in the box and forced a really good Pickford save. But for the most part, Nottingham Forest weren't really able to get a lot of control on the ball, and Everton couldn't really do much either. One thing you can say is the few times that Everton did look vulnerable was on the right back side, and we've seen a couple of games now where at first there was Seamus Coleman. And that wasn't really working. So Dyche was like, "We're not going to do that. We just lost 6-0 to Chelsea." And he was trying Ashley Young like in front of Seamus Coleman in midfield, and that wasn't working either. So instead, we saw Ashley Young back into right back, and Ashley Young could have given away 3 PKs, at least 2. There was one that maybe the first one could maybe be acceptable, The other two, I think, was Stonewall, and Nottingham Forest didn't get it. So that's going to be the main thing I'll talk about. As far as coming into this, they were unlucky last week as well for basically 2 reasons. Uh, 1, not getting 3 points after outplaying Wolves, but 2, they had to play Wolves with Mateus Cunha, returning, and all he did was score 2 goals, scored 1 spectacular individual goal, and then all Mateus Cunha did is do his calf, like, the next training day and sideline, so he wasn't able to go versus Arsenal. So, the Wolves team without Mateus Cunha probably wouldn't have gotten points versus Nottingham Forest. And then Everton, all they did was get embarrassed by, just Cole Palmer by himself scored 4 goals. It could have been even worse, but at the same time, that game could have been 6-3 because Beto was able to get into some chances as well. They were able to create that game, just couldn't finish. And we saw some consequences of that. We saw Dominic Calvert-Lewin get a start instead of Beto, and we saw Ashley Young back instead of Seamus Coleman. And we didn't see Onana, Amadou Onana, in the squad. We saw Idris Gueye kind of being like the lone pivot. And we saw Andre Gomez kind of played next to Corey. So I like the idea of Gomez. Gomez gives him a little different look through the middle of the field. And it was just yeah, you look at that squad and it is bare bones. It really is. It's not like the bench is much better either. There's Chier that can maybe come on if Calvert-Lewin or Beto aren't really firing. It is rough. Yeah, if you don't have someone like Godfrey that can play on the right back side, and Godfrey is, I think he's more of a center back, but he at least seemed to offer a little more control in in the games that Everton were winning. Young and Seamus Coleman, that right back side is a problem for them. I'm curious if we don't see James Garner tried there next game. Maybe we'll see that versus Liverpool. James Garner played right back for them last year versus Bournemouth, if I remember right, because they didn't have fullbacks or wingbacks available that game. They went with Garner, and Garner played well. Um, so I'll be interested to see maybe if we see that because Garner came on as a sub in this game. I think he came on for Andre Gomez. I like James Garner. I think he's young. He's shown the ability to play in different positions. It's just it's not really fitting this kind of team because there's just other than, like, going long, they don't really have they don't really have a style of play. They're the most direct team in the league, and they're not really good at attacking either. So, yeah, it is a rough time for Sean Dyche, but, they have a big game versus Liverpool, and it is at Everton's ground. That's not an easy place to play, so we'll see what they do, this game, and then they have a big one, coming up with versus Luton. So we'll see what they do there. I already mentioned how the kind of the big basically the biggest moments. So at halftime, nothing really happened, and then the real stuff happened, I guess, in the second half. So here, Danilo has a really nice early ball that I guess surprises Everton. Finds Callum Hudson-Odoi behind Ashley Young. This time he's goal sided, and for sure Hudson-Odoi is going to have a 1v1 chance with Pickford. And instead, he's brought down from behind. Young gets none of the ball, and this isn't even looked at. This isn't given. This isn't looked at. The PGML people have already said that the person doing the VAR didn't even look at this, and this happens at 1-0. At a minimum, it's a PK. I think Young is denying a goal scoring opportunity. I think it could have been a red. Uh, 1-1, if you convert the PK with Everton playing down a man, this changes. This changes a lot. So, Forest are right to be upset, and that really is kind of the story of the game. They were furious, and I think they're right to be. And there's been a lot of talk online as well, or not even online. Just there's been a lot of talk that football presenters, or I guess pundits, that spent a lot of time on the words that were used as opposed to like the substance of the critique, which actually kind of got me hot headed a little bit. And I will kind of just focus on that because there really wasn't much to talk about in the game. Massive 3 points for Everton, I guess you can say, but yeah, controversy. 3 incidents, one maybe indisputable, one indisputable one, two maybe iffy. I'm gonna argue you actually could say two indisputable, because the one on the handball on Ashley Young is no different than the one that Coventry got in their game. And it's another error, and Nottingham Forest called out the error, as did the manager. And everyone involved in media has had us think about, how dare they? Carragher said they sound like a fan and a pundit. It's unprofessional. Carragher did a piece in the Guardian, basically, advising Liverpool and Spurs game should be replayed because of a reffing error, and he's right at the time they were right to talk about that. That could actually be, now that I think about it, that could be the reason why Liverpool actually don't win the title this year because of that stupid Luis Diaz goal being ruled out. Um, Liverpool had also had a chance to actually get a point at the very end and far and playing down nine with 9 men, and Spurs were able to get a very late goal. I think off own goal off Joel Matip, like the last kick of the game, because it was 1-1 even then, and then that made it 2-1 where they lost. They didn't get any points that game. That 1 point would have been massive right now, and they basically that 1 point would have given them it would have. Who knows how the rest of the game would have ended, but ruling out a full goal was massive. It really was. Also, they were hard done by the sending offs as well. So, there's been a time for, people to call out, these refs, and no one's done it. Every time that's happened, it's been, I guess tribalism has prevented fans from really coming together, to get, the PGMLO people to have a rethink about this. And by just shoving it to a side, to me, it's no different than social issues. We think of like gun control. Not to necessarily go in a political rant, but it's always take time to pray for the families. But as you do that. Over time, everything kind of gets back to the status quo, and then it happens again, and then you want people demand action, and nothing changes because those same people that were saying, "Take your time for that incident," will say the same for here. And it's no different, in this situation either. Anytime there's been a ref mistake, anyone that's been, involved, with the league or associated with it has been, stay calm. Will don't call that out. You all you're doing is you're delegitimizing the legitimacy of the league, essentially. But what they're in my I'm going to argue, it's the opposite. It's on them. They have a duty to do their best they can to get the calls right, or admit error when they don't. Because if they don't, that does far more to derail things than the public calling it out. And I think the club was right to put out the statement. Maybe they could have used different words, but I'm not really going to focus too much on that. I mean, the conspiracy thing, being a Luton fan, I think was kind of the word that they went with. That could be argued too far because if nothing else, one thing you can say is the if you were a Luton fan, the better result probably would have been a 1-1. Kind of a draw here, where neither team really got 3 points. But that's all to really say about that. The media has latched on to that line and ignored the refs got this wrong. And it's consequential. It really is. Uh, because Forest are facing relegation, and by facing relegation, you face with a bunch of other stuff that comes with it. Massive financial loss as well. It is not small potatoes, and they're right to be upset about it. So, uh, the another thing to talk about is if the issues here were the reason why the calls were wrong is because a bunch of refs are just fans of like other certain clubs. Andy Townsend or Michael Oliver is a fan of Man City. In this game, someone was alleged to be a fan of Luton. That would be easier to fix, in my opinion. That means that, they know what they're doing, and, they're just doing it nefariously. Doing it, uh, uh, they're doing it on purpose. I don't think that is the case. I think which is I'm gonna argue it's worse because I think it's just a case of just having way too many underqualified or just incompetent people, in charge of making these decisions. Too many people are employed this way, and they're just doing a bad job. If someone was doing it nefariously, that means they would be capable of actually doing the right thing. I don't think they are. So I'm going to argue that's actually worse. So there needs to be a change here. There needs to be, Howard Webb has tried to argue that it's transparent to, say that they got things wrong or to show how a few calls that happened a month ago, happened in real time. I don't necessarily think that's done anything at all. And again, It's happened too often this year, and, because no one else has ever said enough. It should have happened after the Liverpool Diaz one, where they legit got a goal, ruled out where everyone saw it happen. They put out a statement, it happened. When you saw it in real time, the actual, on video, it's even worse because they recognize they screwed up, and then they're like, "Should we stop the game?" And it's like, "No, you can't, mate." So there's been a time for patience, and patience has waned, and I just didn't like how Jamie Carragher was going after the statement, than actually saying, "No, they're actually right. Maybe the wording was wrong, but they're actually right to say this, and this you've had enough." Because if without that, it's not going to change. You can have fans being really upset, but it's going to take people inside to force some change. And that was a moment. That was a moment that I think Carragher and bunch of people in Sky or in football media let drop. And so because that nothing happened, all you've done is you've upset fans. And when this happens again, what if this happens in, like, the FA final, or, something bigger than this? What if it decides the title race, later on? You're gonna have the same thing happen, and so are you, how would the reaction be then? It probably won't change. So, and you're not gonna get changed by just having people angry, from the outside. No, a club, is one thing. You're gonna need, broader support. Maybe if clubs came together, that would change things, but yeah, there needs to be something on that, and that's all I'll say, about that. Don't really love, speaking about stuff outside the game, but I had to talk a little bit about that. As far as the game itself, Nottingham Forest, Gio was tried, on the right, so it didn't look comfortable there, unfortunately. They were trying to use Nico Williams kind of as the right winger, so giving Gio a little more time to kind of play in the half space, but, I do think, you know, when Anthony Alonga can't go, Morgan Gibbs White has a little more pace to him. He probably fits a little bit better on that side. Now that's taking your best player away from his 10 spot. I think Gio works better as the 10. To be honest, I think Gio could also actually play deeper. He can win some duels. He's got a good head on his when he can turn with the ball as well. But that's just kind of the only critique to say. I mean, Nottingham Forest have to basically win out, or win, not win out. But Nottingham Forest have to play for their lives. So the coach isn't going to care about Gio getting minutes or not. He's going to care about trying to win the game. I do think he would help them try to win the game in a different kind of role. But it's not really the time to experiment. To be fair. But and there really weren't many moments for Chris Wood. The one that he got forced a really good Pickford save. So it is worth kind of saying that Pickford did. Pickford had a horrid game a week ago versus Chelsea. Was good here, and the only negative really you could say is Metzels probably could have done better on some of those half chances. And then there was a moment when Gibbs White was maybe had a half chance. It looked like he was in on goal as well. I think there was it was like it was 1-0 at this time as well in the second half, and Pickford did well to at least make it awkward, and Gibbs White had to, try to, hit it quickly, and tried to get the curl on it, and didn't get curl, and just basically hit it out wide. But that's kind of all we're at. And then with Burnley and Sheffield, they go on to win 4-1. I'm probably not gonna be able to spend a ton of time talking about that. It's not too bad. Uh, 4-1 versus with Brun Larson, and then Assignon. Brun Larsen's on a heater a little bit for Burnley. He scored like four goals in the last like 5 games. Assignon, Brun Larsen had a chance to actually score for Brighton as well. And then Gustav Harmer makes it 2-1. Sheffield actually played quite well. It didn't really reflect the scoreline, but that's kind of been them. It's not enough to actually play well. They've been the worst team defensively all year, and when they concede a couple, it just craters on them. And basically, Burnley were able to get a couple right after that, so they made it 2-1, and then Foster made it 3-1, and then Gudmundsson had just come on as a sub, made it 4-1, and that's kind of it. Sheffield had the opportunities in that first half to actually make it, give themselves the lead. Instead, it took a while for Burnley to actually get going a little bit in this, and frankly, the keeper for Burnley, Muric, who's had some controversy the last couple of games. Had that error versus Brighton, had that error versus Burnley, not Burnley, had that error versus Everton, and that's the only goal that was scored in that Everton game. And so you look back. had Norwich not made those errors, Burnley now have some extra points here where they might have actually, hopped Luton, possibly hopped Nottingham Forest. So Burnley only, I think, 3 points off Nottingham Forest now. So there's still a chance here. There's still a chance for have a bit of a super kind of surprise comeback here. And one thing I'm not going to talk a lot about the game, but one thing I will say about Burnley is they've stuck with Vincent Company all year, and it's gotten to a point where I thought it was almost kind of comical because he was repeating himself over and over after every single post game, saying, we're close, we're getting close. Our guys are making mistakes, but we're getting close. And to me, it felt like very similar to Tiger Woods uh, back in like 4 or 2003 when he was going through his swing changes, saying, "I'm close," and no one ever believed him. And then he won won the Masters in like 2005, or even in like 2006, he won a couple majors, and then just kept going. It almost like feels like that. Like Burnley or Vincent Company was seeing things happening in training, and it's finally kind of clicked a little bit for them. They've gone 7 games, I think, unbeaten now. Like they look like a side that could stay up. And it's just taken a while for them to finally find their guys, finally find the right midfield that works for them, the right back line that works for them. So, but that said, Sheffield had a chance here. 2 big chances for them, 2 missed. Brimington Diaz was in behind. I think Mick Burnley had a chance, but just Marich had to make a number of really big saves to just kind of keep Burnley in the game. And then the quality kind of showed out. Assignon was really big for them. Scored the second goal. I think had a nice little run that actually created the third goal as well. They were able to find Forrest into the box, and that's kind of the thing with Sheffield is defensively, they've just been all over the place, and it finally showed up here. They really did play better than what the scoreline suggested, but that's not enough at this level. And when they go down, that'll be why a change of manager hasn't really changed how they've been defensively, and so you're starting to see somewhat a competitive side, arguably. But the defensive issues have just been too much for them to overcome. So that's kind of just where they are. And with Burnley, one thing I want to say is uh, I wonder what this side would have been like this year had they been able to keep hold of Nathan Tella, who's getting minutes for Bayern Leverkusen. The side that won in Germany. Isaac Madsen, who's starting for the Champions League semifinalist in Dortmund. 2 players that were really big for them last year that they had to find a way to move on and just kind of recreate the squad. So Company, they haven't had Foster for most of the season. They've lost him to injury. Now I think he also had a knock this game, so we'll have to find him. They had Kolyashu doing some good things for them, and they lost him back in October. So it hasn't been the easiest thing for Vincent Company to figure out. And what they did is, it's funny enough, they brought in Fofana to kind of help him a little bit, and maybe he did, but he's actually once since they've gone on this little run of theirs, Fofana's kind of been sidelined a little bit. And I do think the revelation has been finding Odegaard to just blossom for them, but players like Bryn Lawson starting to finally find some goals in his game as well, and then Asin Young as at the right back. So we'll see what if Burnley are able to do. I don't necessarily know if they have anyone head to head, where if they played Forest, that could be a monster game. But well, they're not that far off. I think they are only 3 points off. So we'll see if Vincent Company can stage some kind of heroic comeback, and what a story that would be for them if so. And another thing to say is it's. In this little 7 game stretch, Josh Brownhill hasn't necessarily started, but what he's done is he's come on and he's kind of inserted a little energy in the second half as well. And you have to remember one of those 7 games that were able to get a draw in. They played down a man and drew Chelsea at the very end. So uh, because of someone like Josh Brownhill coming on, so that's kind of where we are with them. And then let's see. Yeah, kudos for them to stick with Company. It would have been easy to turn away. That another point I want to say about that because they did this like 2 years ago with Sean Dyche. I feel like they probably would have been able to stay up had they not made the trigger. So maybe they learned. Uh, who knows if they still go down or not. I do think it'll still have been the right call to stick with your manager as opposed to what everyone else around them did, because it hasn't really. Luton have kind of done the same thing. They've stuck with Rob Edwards. Uh, you know, we'll see. We'll see if that ends up saving them or not. At the end of the day, it really is all about with Luton. It's about not having defensive quality with you. He has a good goalkeeper, but defensively, they're some of the worst. Sheffield, the worst defense in the league, maybe ever. And with Burnley, it's taken a while for them to find their footing again. It was one of the better sides in the beginning of the season. Like not better sides. It was they were in like top 10 when it came to like passing, and a thing that companies wanted to do is wanted to play from the back. And it doesn't always it hasn't always come off. Actually, it's been maybe a reason why they are where they are, but it's finally starting to come together a little bit. They had some moments where they looked like Brighton versus Brighton. They had some really nice passing moments. They did the same thing here, where they were able to pass from the back and able to go from the defense into attack quite well, or go from the keeper having the ball to attacking the final third. So I think it's a good story. So we'll see if it ends up being a little bit more than a good story, but we'll have to see. And then Aston Villa and Bournemouth. Aston Villa going to win 3-1 with Solanke getting the first goal with a PK, and then Diaby. Rogers has been a really nice person that's come into the side. He's probably someone that maybe wouldn't have even seen minutes. And I was wondering, Ashton Villa should probably do something in the January window because I didn't feel like they were strong enough attack wise. What they did is they brought in this Rogers guy from Middlesbrough, and all he's done is actually give them some real minutes and actually look quite good. So, I mean, the goal he scored right here is quite good. And then Leon Bailey for the third, and the three goals that Aston Villa scored were very nice. So that's kind of the story I really want to get to. Also, Aston Villa were coming off, they didn't just play well versus get that win over Arsenal. They had to gut it out over Lille in Europa. Only side to advance for England to make it to the semifinals in a Europe competition. So it would have been easy for them to kind of take this off a little light, and it took a while for it to get going because Bournemouth did get the first goal. I think Matty Cash brought someone down, and Bournemouth played well versus Man United. Maybe unlucky to only leave that game with a draw, and this was a fun game. But I really want to touch on what happens with the goals that Aston Villa were able to create because man, were they good. So here it looks like Bournemouth were actually on the break, and Ryan Christie had a nice ball to Solanke. Bournemouth again poached the ball off Villa. It looked like there was a chance for the counter for them, but only Clivert had a touch maybe too early, and then Christie went a touch too early, so he went offside. Christie saw it, wasn't able to play it, and then Diaby runs back and is able to win the ball off him, and then Villa had the chance to break away, and Leon Bailey plays a nice long ball to Morgan Rogers. He does brilliant. Gets inside and chops inside, fooling Adam Smith, and then has a really nice finish. Uh, and what a goal! And then Adam Smith is kind of caught in no man's land because he has to mark Ollie Watkins making a run between him and Konza, and just Watkins is or not him and Konza, him and Zabaneri. And Watkins run alone almost creates the opportunity for Rogers. Rogers still has to do a lot himself. And then what a moment for the 21-year-old who again probably is only getting the opportunity because of what happened to Jacob Ramsey, but he's come in and really inserted a little energy to this Aston Villa team. And another thing worth saying is Unai Emery went into this with a really strong lineup. It's not something that we've seen this year that much, where he's played Leon Bailey, Watkins, this Rogers guy, and then Diaby. Diaby was kind of like their 10. Diaby has been tried sometimes as like Leon Bailey's stead. And when Villa hasn't necessarily been, playing that well, the change has been Leon Bailey to come on for Diaby. This time we actually saw them play together. And man, they really did look good, which we'll get to. So that's kind of where we were at halftime, and then the second half. This is an amazing goal. So back to front textbook, how to start the ball with the keeper, pass it short. So Paul Torres first has the pass, finds Watkins. Watkins as well to hold off the defender tight on his shoulder, and plays it back to Torres, who then first times it upfield to Morgan Rogers, who's found himself unmarked, middle of the field, where Bournemouth defenders don't want to follow him. And Rogers gets the ball, turns, plays it to Watkins, continuing his run. And then Rogers has a similar pass on the in the first half, or he had a similar pass in the first half. Didn't play it. He plays it here. Watkins is slipping past Adam Smith, and then Watkins chops inside to go past Smith again. Poor Adam Smith. Slips into Diaby's path, and then Diaby splitting the center backs with a nice little run into the box. Diaby is able to put it away, but this is really nice goal here. It's also good to see Diaby coming good for them. Yeah, it's been taking a time for him to find his goal scoring form. I think they said like 7 league goals now, but he's since February he's really come good for them as well. And it looked like a good decision also in the final third again by Watkins. Watkins got the ball and saw the run was on and was able to create another goal scoring opportunity. So Watkins didn't score this game, but he was involved really all 3 goals. And then there was a moment for Bournemouth where Christie floated a ball into the box. Watatari got on the end of it, could only force a save. And then Watkins had a chance for 3, another really good run, and picked out with another weighted ball, long ball. But Watkins couldn't finish, but it doesn't matter because they get the third very shortly after that. So Watkins first gets onto a long ball play to him. He shows great touch here to bring it down, but there's a defender really tight on him. He finds a teammate, and then Rogers does well to keep the ball under pressure and passes it to Digna. And then Digna quickly finds Watkins again, who is run to the middle of the field. Watkins then does well to collect it. I think someone is, it might be Zabineri, who's tried to run tight on Watkins. So Zabineri has left his area to run tight on Watkins, kind of like the halfway line. Watkins is able to turn Zabineri, getting tight on him, and then Watkins plays it to Diaby, who touches it forward to Rogers, who touches it forward to Watkins, continuing his run into the box. A little complicating here. And then Watkins beats Neto, coming to the ball and basically plays a square ball to the back post where Leon Bailey's there for the easy tap and finish. Just a really good move by Aston Villa. Lots of movement, lots of running, quick passing. Everyone just knows where everyone is. When someone plays a pass, the idea isn't just like stand there. The idea is to continue to move. This was Bournemouth were just kind of went up against a better team essentially. So yeah, good game. I mean, Bournemouth had moments as well. But Villa are a different category right now. 15 shots, five on goal, but four big chances created, 4 big chances apiece though. As well, 2 missed for Villa, 3 missed for Bournemouth. Aston Villa majority of the ball. But yeah, this was a moment for where they could have slipped up a little bit. Unai Emery went into this maybe recognizing I need to play a strong team. So he played Diaby, Watkins, Leon Bailey together, which is something we haven't really seen, and it did not clash, and it did not make them defensively liable. Now Bournemouth were able to get a couple moments on them, but only really a couple. So and they were able to score 3 goals by doing it. So the positives outweighed the negatives. And another thing to say is you have to praise Ollie Watkins. Now he doesn't score, but his runs and decision making set up all 3 goals. Having a willing runner is everything. City have this with Holland, but they don't play him. They don't play him the way Villa plays Watkins. So it's I think it's credit to Unai Emery. He recognizes what Watkins is, and they play to his strengths. And definitely, I said it a couple of weeks in a row. Definitely worthy of at least shouts for Player of the Year. But another thing too is they don't just play ball. So I guess the flip side is it's like if Watkins loses the ball or like the pass isn't right, it does lead to a turnover, and you can possibly have teams attack on you. But like the caveat is that's the gamble. Pep doesn't like making that gamble. Unai Emery does, and there's been a lot of talks for forever that Unai Emery plays boring football, and maybe I think what he does is he just plays smart football. To be honest, they defend well, but they're a good attacking team. I think they're top 3 when it comes to like open play creation, at least when it comes to XG. Like Unai Emery is the 3rd best coach in the league right now, and yeah, you just wonder will the Conference League kind of get to their legs as well. Because the only thing to say about here is they are in the semifinals. They don't really have a deep squad. So that would be kind of the only thing. I mean, Matty Cash with a poor PK, but I do like him better at right back than Konza. I like Konza actually better at center back. Torres is an important player for them as well. Anytime he's kind of been in the squad, they just look better. They look much better passing the ball. Diego Carlos played well last week with Arsenal, but we didn't see him here. But yeah, not excited. This was as good as they've looked. Villa have looked attacking wise, and they've looked good for a lot of this. But uh, in a lot of their games, it's been kind of hero ball from like Watkins or Bailey saving them. These were team goals. This was movement. This was good. and they were creating at a high clip as well. And just unlucky a little bit for Bournemouth. Unlucky last week versus Man United. Weren't able to convert their chances. Here, their defense had no way to handle Villa's front four, and then with the title race getting to Arsenal and Wolves, not really a ton to talk about in the actual game. Trossard gets the first goal with kind of a I don't say is a miss hit. I'll give him credit that he gets the right contact, I guess we'll say, after Jesus did well to keep the ball alive, and then Trossard took a chance. It's not the easiest chance, and he just kind of swung his foot at it, and that's what you need. That's what I talk about when the people that score goals and then goal scorers. He is an absolute goal scorer. He's to me he's like their Jota of the team. You kind of weird. You don't really know where to fit him. He doesn't really have the best pace to play on the wing, but when you get him in the box, he makes very good decisions in the final third, especially in the penalty area. And probably the best finisher on the team, and they needed that. Arsenal were not good in this game, and they needed that first goal right before halftime as well, which kind of deflated Wolves a little bit. And then they get the second one at the very end with Odegaard, uh, where you don't really understand how this goal happened, but it is nice play by Arsenal. They get Havertz. Havertz actually has Odegaard make overlapping him, plays it to him, and Odegaard first has a cross or shot that's blocked, but he gets the rebound and somehow he's able to squeeze us in from the tight angle where it looks like the keeper actually is there and it like goes through him, almost like hologram. But that's probably fitting. Wolves had a couple of moments here and there where I think they had a shot in the first half by Yao Gomez, forced a Raya save, and then Raya's got a little luck off the post. And then I think there was maybe a couple of moments in the second half where maybe a cross could have been kind of dangerous, but Raya was good to catch it, not just didn't defend it away. Raya was pretty good with his hands and catching it. So I mean, Wolves came into this without any kind of recognizable attacker, and you really saw that. So they tried to play this ugly. They tried to make it hard. They did. Arsenal looked leggy, looked out of ideas for the most part. Arteta only used 3 subs in this game. I thought that was kind of weird. No Fabio Vieira. We saw Party, actually get a little run out. So that was interesting. I do think they possibly could have used him versus Bayern Munich, like I said. But and it was an awkward game because Wolves did give them a competitive game at the Emirates. I think Arsenal won 3-1, but it was a closer game than that. But Wolves had Cunha that game. They had Pedro Neto that game. They did not. They didn't even have Mario Lemina to start this game. So it was not the strongest Wolves side. They did well to defend. They played pretty well in a mid block. They made things difficult. Arsenal still were able to get like 18 20 shots, but not many you remember being threatening. So that's just kind of about 20 and 24 shots, 9 on target, but the XG was only one. Wolves 0.17, so that kind of says it. 5 shots really, one big chance for Arsenal, one missed. Jose Saab made 7 saves, but you don't really remember a lot of them being difficult. Um, but to stick on with Arsenal, I think one thing I was wondering about is maybe Arteta messed up overplaying Saka and Odegaard. I was surprised that we didn't actually see Saka, replaced a little bit. But I do give credit where he's done well to push the City side and the catch club side in record time frame. There's been a lot of people that have been trying to push Arteta out. Maybe you can get someone better. Maybe Arteta is the person to set someone up to be better. That could be the case, but I do think that would also be kind of reactionary because not a lot of people would have been able to do this. So maybe you can get someone better. Funny enough, Unai Emery would probably be. I don't necessarily say would be better, but Arsenal fans don't want to hear that. But um, it not enough have taken the time to appreciate what Arteta's been able to create at Arsenal because where I remember, it was just a couple of years ago where, my buddy Rex and me, my brother Andrew, were talking. They just wanted to because they were finishing eighth and seventh, and they just wanted to get in Europa. They just wanted to get into a Champions League spot. And here they're going to be upset if they don't beat Man City to a title. And so I think that perspective needs to be maintained. And that maybe sounds a little lame and sounds, losers are nice guys finish at second place always. That could be the case. I mean, I do have some ill feelings about finishing second to City for Liverpool in a couple of those years. But the difference here is you could always feel that there was a ceiling for Liverpool players because the age of the squad was always there. It's not the case for Arsenal. The age of the squad is actually in a really good spot for them. Also, Klopp's leaving. You don't know when the Liverpool's going to be like. You look at Spurs. Spurs with Ange Pochettino has been interesting. Uh, do you trust them to push City all the way through? I don't necessarily know if that I will. Chelsea look a mess. Man United look a mess. What is it going to be? Villa. Villa have potentially financial fair play issues where they might have to sell some people. Is it going to be Newcastle? You don't really imagine that either. Arsenal are going to be in a good spot for the next couple of years, no matter what happens here. So I think it's worth kind of keeping that in mind as well. Uh, but one thing I was kind of annoyed about was, at least in this game, it almost felt like the idea of like the Phil tilt thing. You could be you see what they do. They move the ball so slowly. But when Wolves were quite good at actually allowing the defenders to have the ball, allowing Arsenal to kind of sit in the box because they weren't really able to find the spaces. It felt like it took Odegaard a while to actually be that creative in this game. And at least what we saw yesterday was Arsenal were far more direct, far quicker. I think another thing too is in this game, we saw Jesus try to striker. Havertz was back in midfield. That has never worked ever. We saw Rice kind of being like the single pivot guy. They moved the ball too slow with him. We saw yesterday Arsenal were just much better. They were back to what they were last season, in my opinion. And the right side was much better than what it had been. I probably would have. I'm not gonna lie. I probably would have a different mindset a little bit. I would probably be feeling a little more confident that maybe Liverpool could do it had yesterday's game not happened or had I not seen it. But they looked really good yesterday. Some of it was on Chelsea being poor. They didn't have Cole Palmer, but Arsenal made Chelsea look poor. So, and I do think the only thing that what's saying as well is, because Party will play balls between the lines. He'll find Odegaard the ball, to caption to capitalize in the final third. You had Shaka making the runs in the box last year. You've started to see Rice kind of move into that kind of player a little bit more, and I think that'll actually be better for England. Uh, but the only thing to say is, they were flying before the Martinelli miss, and Martinelli kind of took them out. But Trossard is their Jota, and the funny thing about it is you don't really know how to necessarily play him best. But what's funny enough, if you're not going to be a counter team and you're just going to be in the final third, Trossard actually works better for you. So yeah, the future's still good for them, and we'll see what they're able to do. Going forward. So and another thing to mention is they'll have Timber back next year, and if they don't really have a lot to do in the summertime now, looks like Jorginho might be out, maybe Party out. I would have. You haven't had him all year, and Party also has had uh, that investigation against him as well. That's always been kind of awkward. It is probably time to move off him, but you need to make a right. You need to bring in the right player for that because I think they recognize Rice works better for you. Uh, being a kind of a dual winner, a do it all kind of box to box kind of player, as opposed to being asked to be on the ball and be a single holder. So bring in someone like a Zubimendi if you can, or find someone in that kind of mold, essentially. And not easy to always get that right, but if you can, that's probably what I would do. And then yeah, they have to really like where they're set up, not just now for for the rest of the season, but for next year and maybe in a few years, if Arteta isn't able uh, to improve them, because what he basically has improved them every single year. I wasn't thinking Havertz was going to work, and I'm starting to eat my words. Havertz, when he's been played in that false nine kind of area, now he hasn't always been best when it comes to his finishing, but if he can actually, he's shown what he can do is he can just be a nuisance, essentially, and who knows? It's only 1 year for them, and yeah, that would probably because it looks like the idea was obviously go get a striker, go get Ivan Toney. He would probably would make you better. You probably win the league with Ivan Toney this year. Anyways, because there were a few games like that game versus Aston Villa, Ivan Toney, you probably do win. Uh, so that would be kind of the only thing to think about. I think it is probably time to move off Jesus. That he's helped you kind of get here, but you could probably maybe improve at least, backup. You need to find someone to play in Saka's stead. You don't really want him to be, overextending himself. I don't know if that's going to be Rice Nelson or not. Other than that, you seem to have a pretty good. They seem to have a pretty good setup. But that's kind of just where we are. And then Wolves, they made things difficult, but it's kind of where they are. Uh, they have an interesting game. I think today they play Bournemouth. The only reason that's interesting is it's the Gary O'Neill derby, where Bournemouth Gary O'Neill was at Bournemouth, and I think it's a pretty cool story as well. Wolves could have been a Cinderella kind of story if they hadn't had all these injury issues. So that's kind of been the story for a lot of these teams, though. To be fair, but it is we're saying, Wolves without any of their front attackers, yeah, how are you supposed to really defend or compete? So, uh, you know, that is kind of just kind of where they are. So they'll be a fun side next year. I will say that, and it's pretty cool that it's a club has decided to take a chance on Gary O'Neill. He only got the job at as being a caretaker for Bournemouth, and then he was able to get a side that had just gotten destroyed 9-0 by Liverpool, to be able to regroup. And I think they got the first because that was right after they fired their manager, and then all they did after that was I think they won the next or they drew the next game 0-0, and then got a win, and he was able to keep that side up last year, and then Bournemouth decided to move on to Areola, who has worked out for them as well, and then Wolves didn't have a manager 5 games to go into the year. We're able to bring on Gary O'Neill, and he's been a good addition. And then with Liverpool and Fulham, Liverpool do go on to win 3-1. Trent Alexander-Arnold with a worldy of a free kick. I was just saying it'll be important for have him back. I didn't think, in this kind of manner. But it's funny enough. I think he scored a similar goal versus Fulham in the first leg, and then Bobby Reed made it 1-1 at halftime. I was starting to be a little nervy because similar moment in the first half where they were just blowing a couple chances here and there, and then Ryan Gravenberch calmed those nerves. Probably his best moment since joining the club, and talks on Friday before the game that he was linked to a move to Galatasaray. And then Diego Chota made a 3-1. Returned to the 11, and suddenly the goals returned to the team as well. And it's probably not his best finish, but what he does is he creates it. He does a nice dribble to draw the foul in the for the a free kick goal for the first one as well. But what he does here is he times the run on side, and then he hits it. He hits it hard and low, and basically he's able to get it underneath Bernd Leno. And then what's funny enough is that was quote unquote the backups. Klopp's basically played the second string in a minute of these respects. He brought on Alexis McAllister, who had a turnover that nearly led to a goal. So he came off a little rusty. He brought on Salah, brought on Nunez, and funny enough, the attack looked much worse after those changes, which is not really good because it looks like they might be without Diego Jota for another injury. Looks like maybe he came back too soon, which is an absolute disaster to say the least. He's the only one that to me I trust when he's in the net. Salah would be the other, but Salah doesn't look fit. So the front three there was interesting. Klopp did make some changes. So what he did was, he sat Salah, but he didn't play Harvey Elliott in the at the one of the forward spots. He played Elliott in midfield, and I love this. So it was Trent Alexander-Arnold, Kwanzaa, Van Dijk, Robertson, and then Endo, Elliott, and Gravenberch. And I mentioned last week, Curtis Jones probably going to be the main guy when he returns. He got a chance versus Atalanta to not play a good game. Uh, he just seemed, there was a game when Liverpool needed a lot of goals, and just Curtis Jones was going backwards. He looked safe, and Gravenberch was turning here. He was being forward minded. Maybe he hasn't been the best defensively, but he looks better when he's played on the left than necessarily the right. I remember when he played versus Arsenal in the game that Arsenal beat Liverpool in, Gravenberch was played on the right, and he just tried to play in like the Slabberschlei spot, and it did not work at all. So looks better a little bit on the left, a little more comfortable. And then the front three was Diaz on the right, Jota through the middle, and then Gakpo. Gakpo being played on the left, not through the middle. He seems to understand how to play on the left. He wins a lot of duels. He's got a great little through ball on him, great little pass and vision. And this is where he played when he was at Eindhoven, and I just hate the idea that they tried to turn him into Bobby Firmino, and he's not. He doesn't really understand the false nine kind of idea. Now he can come into midfield and be a decent outlet, but when you're doing that, you're not having anyone that's annoying those center backs. That it's giving them something to do. If Liverpool have a lead, that's one thing. That's one way to play. But when your team is kind of sitting comfortably, you need the only one that offers the runs ahead, if not solid, is Nunez. And then even Jota wasn't necessarily doing that. But I like Gakpo being played on the wing. I just feel like it's much better when you have Robinson, bombing forward like he likes to do. That allows Gakpo to kind of almost be like a second striker, coming from the left side. I just think he looks much better. So I liked the front three. I liked the squad rotation. Szoboszlai and Jones were benched and rested, and so was Alexis McAllister. Endo played well as well. Uh, and one thing to talk about is, at least in that second half, you saw a number of these movements where Indo was getting the ball, quickly turning, pivoting, and then finding a through ball, squeezing one in for Elliott or Gravenberch. Gravenberch was doing the same thing, getting the ball, turning, and then finding a little forward pass to find feet. Uh, it wasn't just going sideways or backwards. When the space was there, they were carrying it. Liverpool just looked much better, much more sure of themselves. Basically, they get the second goal because Elliott does a really good job uh, to play a little through the ball as well. There's a Grafenberch is kind of waiting, and you've got the two Fulham players, and Elliott just kind of threads a needle to beat them. Grafenberch gets it and then turns and has a wonder goal. So there was a lot of positives here. Just and I would have been a lot more positive if I didn't know about that Jota news. Yeah, I mean, only 14 shots though is worth kind of saying that, and they got a lot of shots towards the end. Seven on target though. Fulham with 12 shots and five, one big chance apiece. Fulham could not really keep the ball. Liverpool with 566 passes. Fulham were not really able to turn them over with Yao Paulinho. That's not easy for Liverpool to be able to do. Fulham played Liverpool quite good at Anfield, and they were not really that competitive. It was 1-1 in halftime. It felt like it was maybe something for their fans to be upbeat about, but the second half they were not. They didn't really show up. Um, and there you go. I mean, the season basically came down to win or go home, and they were able to win. Klopp made a statement by keeping a couple of those guys out. I thought Klopp made a statement also after the Atalanta game where they won. They won at 1-0. But they were down 3-0 to start, so they lost by 2 goals on the aggregate. They needed to score basically three to four goals to win that tie, and it didn't feel like the ambition or uh, it didn't feel like they thought was there to the drive was there to do it. After the game, it seemed like Klopp was happy to actually win the game, get a clean sheet, and to lose out of Europe. So uh, I was a little bit worried after that, but they were able to regroup. So that was positive. I already mentioned about Gakpo, but I like him so much better when he's played on the left. And the only thing I'll say with uh, maybe with Jota being out, maybe we'll actually see it again. Is I want to see Nunez and Gakpo kind of played together, almost like a 1-2 hitman. I don't think teams are good enough to stop that. Uh, if Salah can't play on the right, if Salah needs rest, I want Diaz to be on the right. I don't want Diaz to be played on the left too. I think the attack looked much smoother and quicker when Diaz was on on the right and was cutting inside, and he doesn't actually. He was cutting outside. He doesn't really have the left foot, so he was offering a little bit more crosses into the box. He was still making runs. He had a header that nearly scored, but he wasn't slowing down. He gets the ball. He slows things down. Gakpo doesn't. Gakpo is quickly to get on a turn, and he's such a big body. He's a menace, and he's got an amazing shot on him as well. He nearly scored. There was a corner kick that he was able to draw by forcing a Leno save with a screamer of a shot. So I just hope we see this. I hope Klopp doesn't go back to Diaz on the right, Salah through the middle, and then Nunez again through the Salah through the on the right, and then Nunez through the middle. I hope we don't see that again. I want to see Gakpo start for Everton, but we'll have to see. And then another thing too is Trent back, and just the fluid movement had returned, and you just missed what they had been missing. Uh, Connor Bradley did a good job in Trent's stead, but he's just different kind of gravy. And then they were playing through lines. That was really the kind of the note I had is just all three the midfielders were doing well to collect the ball, turn, and pass through defenders to find teammates ahead of them. None of the side to side stuff. And there you go. I mean, Gravenberch not been my cup of tea. Had a chance because of Slabberstein and Curtis Jones being benched. McAllister benched as well. And it took it to heart. And I think another thing too is it, Curtis Jones has come back. it's one thing to return from injury, it's another thing to sometimes you have cobwebs, sometimes you come back and you're rusty. I think that kind of showed up a little bit. Szoboszlai hasn't necessarily been the same player since he's returned from injury as well. And so there was a moment here, and Gravenberch, took it. I wouldn't be against seeing Gravenberch versus Everton, to be honest, and I never would have imagined saying that just a couple of weeks ago. But Liverpool fans finally saw what anyone would have seen, from going on YouTube and looking at his Ajax highlights. You finally saw that player again, so that was positive. And I do think before Ryan Gravenberch got hurt versus Brentford, he looked quite good versus Luton. Now it is Luton, but it looks like he was finally starting to come around a little bit, and so maybe there can be a spot for him. Uh, and one thing to say though is there is a new manager coming in. You don't know if he's going to play with three midfielders, and Gravenberch reportedly or very notably was not comfortable at playing in Bayern Munich's Flick or whoever the coach was, Nagelsmann's kind of system. And, he didn't really fit in at Bayern Munich, and because he didn't feel like a holding kind of a pivot kind of midfielder, and he doesn't really have the pace to really play in the attack. So, and it does feel like the manager that they're linked to, does like playing that 4-2-3 or 4-2-4 kind of shape. So, would Gravenberch kind of be on the outside in that situation? Now he is Dutch, and it looks like the coach that they're linked to is Dutch as well. So maybe that could be something to think about. It's possible that he'll stick the new guy that they're linked to might stick with the Klopp formation because it's just kind of it's kind of a just haggling over where people play on the field. It's the same kind of setup really. To be honest, even though it's you change from maybe a pivot to a single pivot, but the main thing is it's not three at the back, so you don't have three center backs. And the main thing it seems to be you're playing a high line, you're pressing. It looks like so there are a lot of similarities. It seems this guy that they're linked to is known for being one of the better pressers. Now it is in a different league, and people that have come from that league haven't always been great in the EPL. You can think about Ten Hag. And so that's kind of just where we're at. And I guess I'll get started with I'll finally end with that a little bit. So it looks like the because the news broke Monday that they're not looking at Ruben Amorim anymore, who does play that kind of Xavi Alonso kind of three at the back kind of system. I was wondering, the Stuttgart has a manager, Sebastian Hornb, who has drawn Zerbi comparisons. I thought he was going to be linked to Bayern Munich, and they ended up maybe going with Ragnick. I was thinking, German as well. Maybe you could look that way, and it looks like maybe they've looked somewhere else. So, Gary O'Neill was once Liverpool's U21 coach, but it looks like that those links have kind of died out. And the hot news today was Feyenoord coach Arne Slot, who's been thrown around by Paul Joyce, and Dutch connection already at Liverpool with Van Dijk, Gakpo, and Gravenberch. Supposedly plays similar attack-minded football again, not three at the back, inverts his right back, so Trent could still keep his role. There's talks that his build-up is very similar to what De Zerbi does, high possession based. Again, in Eredivisie, it's easier to play in that league, but I don't know. We'll see. But still a time for to maybe still make this season special. It'll require Arsenal and City to drop some points. But one thing I am going to say is it is so annoying that Diaz VAR decision could end up actually deciding the title, and heads should absolutely roll if that is the case. I know that happened back in like October or September, but that if Liverpool had an extra point to play with, then this would be different. Now you can say that all they had to do was beat Crystal Palace or just get a draw versus Crystal Palace at home, where that wouldn't have mattered either, which is a fair point as well. And then with Fulham, not much to really talk about. They couldn't keep hold of the ball anytime Liverpool were doing well to press them into mistakes, and were able to kind of pounce on that. Maybe that was a good call by Klopp to actually have some squad rotation because the legs were there to press and to get those center backs to turn the ball over because Munoz wasn't really able to get many touches, and they missed William. William wasn't able to play in this game, and they didn't have uh, anyone that was nearly the same. And Bobby Reed, I think actually scored, but no, it wasn't. It was Castagna. Bobby Reed wasn't really able to influence the game much, and William is like 38, so Fulham are going to have to figure out a way to kind of fix that next season. I don't know if it'll be Iwobi just playing on that side and trying Harvey Wilson, but Fulham probably need to address that. But one thing to end with is I was one of those that was actually I a little bit worried about Fulham more than any all the other teams, to be honest, because the first few weeks they were atrocious when it came to conceding a lot of chances to teams. They were giving a lot of teams looks, and what all they've done is because they also lost Mitrovic early in the year, and brought in Raul Jimenez to replace him. Then they brought in Armando Broja in January, and all they did was they discovered Rodrigo Munoz having this little purple patch for them. The other thing to think about is I was worried because they were so bad defensively. Tim Green wasn't really working out for them, and really the change that Marcus Silva made was once Tosin became healthy again. It was Tosin on one side, Calvin Bassey played a little bit on the left, more on his stronger foot, and they've been a dominant CB pairing. Now they weren't necessarily great in this game, but that's been a pretty good change for them, and they've been since about November, December. They haven't really looked back. They've been pretty solid. So good job by Marco Silva, and good job for them because they play pretty appealing football on the eye as well. And I wasn't, kind of, thinking about that, coming into the season. So, credit to Fulham because again, I thought this was going to kind of blow up a little bit, and it didn't. So good for them. And then that'll kind of be it. So. That'll be it for our show this week. Liverpool and Everton are about to kick off, so I'll try to watch that, and then I'll be back sometime like Tuesday or Wednesday to talk about what happened in the over the weekend. So until then, you stay squatting and stop recording.